people at large take that as a alternative. So that is the glaring example what we see. But unless we can make some protocol, some system, some process in it, and more importantly, the infrastructure and the policy, which includes the tariff-related issues, the, the way it should take place, the way it can be dovetailed in our overall development plan, that may be little bit of, we can be falling short of it. So today's deliberation, we will listen to many eminent speakers all across the world, and we are grateful to British Deputy High Commission Kolkata for being associated with us in this event. And with this, I would request Mr. Deve Mukherjee, the President, the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry, who personally I know, apart from his position as the President, who is one of the pioneer, one of the major, initiator in environmental. I would request Mr. Mukherjee to give his welcome address.
Thank you very much, Gautam, for your very kind words. And I take this opportunity to join Mr. Gautam Ray, our Vice President and Chairman of the Energy Environment Committee, to welcome all of you, ladies and gentlemen, to this afternoon's deliberations on e-mobility, infrastructure, business readiness, strategies, and green jobs creation. I understand this is a precursor to the 14th Annual Energy and Environment Conclave of the Chamber. And indeed, it's heartening to note that the British Deputy High Commission has partnered with us, and we consider it a privilege to be associated with the High Commission in this endeavor. Ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about e-mobility, we all understand that e-mobility is an integral part of the transition process to a clean transport. Both energy transition and transport transition, clean transport and clean energy, are two focus areas that are being addressed at the COP26 meet later on this year in Glasgow. And both these transition processes, transport and energy, are linked to the other three focus areas as part of the overall vision in terms of the focus of COP26. And those three other aspects are adaptation and resilience in terms of the changing climate scenario, in terms of nature-based solutions, and very importantly, green finance. The short point is all these five aspects are integrally connected. And to my mind, ladies and gentlemen, when we are having any discussion on the climate agenda and any aspect of Sorry, I found that I was muted. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Yeah, I find there's a lot of background noise. I don't know how that can be sorted. Anyway, so as I was saying that for any discussion on climate agenda and different aspects of a climate agenda, one necessarily needs to take a very holistic view of the sustainability development goals set out, and they all add up. They are different strands that they all add up to what I would call an inclusive and equitable social order, a resilient and sustainable business ecosystem, and help realize the vision of a common good for all. We, all of us, are passing through a phase of deep anxiety. But this phase has given us an opportunity to reimagine our lifestyle and our work practices. And to my mind, that's a good starting point for a discussion and deliberation on the subject at hand. Bengal Chamber and the British Deputy High Commission have jointly deliberated on the climate agenda and the specific aspects of climate agenda with a specific focus on e-mobility at our last Energy and Environment Conclave. And this event, along with series of forthcoming events, would help us move towards COP26, review our commitments towards a just and fair and clean transition, and to strengthen our ambitions towards the climate goals. For the readiness in terms of the infrastructure and in embracing e-mobility, proliferating e-mobility, the process gains traction, to my mind, if there is a seamless integration of policy push and market pull. And this is the point I had made at the last Energy and Environment Conclave as well. The demand drive to adopt clean mobility comes out of a need and a response from the community. And that will happen when it becomes a necessity to do something here and now. On the front of green jobs, to my mind, it is an inevitable outcome from developing strong green value chains. And that is something which will necessarily happen if these green value chains come into play. In terms of the context of Kolkata and Bengal, I would like to compliment the government as well as all the stakeholders and the community at large for having successfully embraced e-mobility, and especially in the area of public transport and last mile connectivity. The challenge, however, remains in the space of private transport and long haul transport. And this is where, to my mind, innovation would play a major role in terms of technology adoption, in terms of designing business models, and of course, the community engagement. Because to make this a preferred choice, we necessarily need to have a bottom-up, a ground-up approach. And I will be a little optimistic to say that the vision of having 30% of transport by way of electric mobility by 2030 during this decade would definitely be a reality. And certainly the city of Kolkata and the state of West Bengal can show the way. We have a host of eminent speakers who would be addressing us this afternoon, and I extend a very warm welcome to all of them, and a very, very special welcome to His Excellency, Mr. Nick Lowe. Nick, a warm welcome to you, and thank you very much for having graced this occasion with your presence, and we look forward to hearing your views on the readiness and on what we should do in order to make e-mobility a success. We all keenly look forward to an afternoon's deliberations, and I'm sure we will have significant takeaways, which we will package together and link it up to the future events that will all add up to a very, very convincing narrative, which we hope to present at COP26. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the proceedings.
And as we prepare the stage for Mr. Niklo, we'll have a look at a short video of COP26.
Thank you, Mr. Mukherjee. And we have seen a short video on COP26 too. I would now request Mr. Nick Lowe, British Deputy High Commission, Kolkata, delivering his introductory address and setting the tone of the event, actually.
Mr. Ray, thank you very much indeed, sir. Can I just check, can you see and hear me?
Yes, we can hear you too.
You can do, thank you. Okay, I've taken my life in my hands this afternoon. I'm sharing a house with my two children, both of whom, as I speak, have online lessons where they're required to have their cameras on. I think my home Wi-Fi is stressed. If at any point you have problems hearing me, please say I will turn the camera off. Huh? Namaskar, namaskar, namaste, assalamu alaikum, a very good afternoon to all of you. Mr. Ray, our old friend Mukherjee, thank you very much indeed. I've been indebted to for bringing us together this afternoon. Today we discuss how to up our game on clean transport, which clearly is an absolutely critical challenge to address the threat of climate change. Now, for road transport, the promise of cheaper and of cleaner technology is not only real, it's here. We hope, indeed we expect our roads in the United Kingdom, in India, and all around the world to look and indeed to sound very different by the end of this decade. Electric vehicles are already cheaper to run than fossil fuel cars, and they're expected to be cheaper to buy within the next few years. But even by the most optimistic estimates, only half of new car sales globally will be electric by 2040. And to meet all that pace of transition, well, we're committed to working together to achieve this, and we believe we can do that if we work together. Now, as Mukherjee said, the UK will be hosting the United Nations COP26 Climate Summit in November this year. And as COP26 President, we bring together the international community to make progress in those 5 critical areas: clean transport, clean energy, adaptation and resilience, finance, and nature-based solutions. And we're taking steps domestically and internationally in all of these areas. These are not and or. To protect the future of our planet, we need to make early, substantive progress across the board. Well, what's happening in the UK in electric mobility? I tell you this, not to blow our own trumpet, although I think we've got a very good story to tell. I grew up in a country that had a reputation as being the dirty man of Europe. Now we are Europe's leaders on this agenda. And I think that's really important, that however difficult it seems, it shows you can make real change with the political will to do so. And we've got big changes in the UK. In November, our Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced an end to the sale of new petrol and diesel cars in the United Kingdom by 2030. Now that puts us well on track to be the fastest G7 country to decarbonise cars and vans. From 2035, all new cars and vans must be zero emission at the tailpipe. And between 2030 and 2035, any new cars and vans sold that emit the tailpipe must have significant zero emission capability, i.e. they've got to be plug-in or they've got to be full hybrids. Now that move is underpinned by over £2.8 billion in British government funding to support a greater uptake of zero emission vehicles and to put us at the forefront of the design, the development and the manufacturing of zero emission vehicles. We'll also provide £500 million in research and development and ensure there's up to £1 billion in capital support to drive the electrification of the UK automotive sector. Highways England will provide local authorities in England with £9.1 million to encourage businesses to switch electric vehicles. And we're going to do that by allowing businesses to try electric vehicles for free before they buy. And we're convinced that will persuade them to go down the electric route. We also have a number of Go ultra-low cities in the United Kingdom, which are fast integrating electric mobility within their transportation systems. And that's got off to a very good start. Our Office of Zero Emission Vehicles is working with industry to increase confidence in the charging network and to reduce what is widely referred as range anxiety. That's the fear that a vehicle's got insufficient range to reach destination. Great innovation is taking place across the entire electric vehicle ecosystem. Batteries, smart electric buses, charging infrastructure, powertrains, vehicle-to-grid solutions, and so on. So what are we doing at the international level? Well, we're creating new forums for international collaboration. The Zero Emission Vehicle Transition Council, set up by the United Kingdom, is supporting and accelerating that global transition to clean transport. We were absolutely delighted to have Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Javadekar, at the first meeting in November last year. Let's turn to how we're working with the Indian authorities. India, you don't need me to tell you, is moving steadily towards a shared, connected, electric transportation system. It is a great foundation, a strong commitment, suitable environment to develop its EV ecosystem further. The United Kingdom and India are exchanging knowledge and collaborating on accelerating transition to zero-emission vehicles through a wide range of technical partnership programs with the National Institute for Transforming India, IORG, ministries from all across the government of India, and with state and city governments. There is nowhere is that more the case than in West Bengal and Kolkata, and I'll touch on that briefly. Top electric vehicle companies from the United Kingdom, such as EO Charging, Science Powertrain, AMTE, Faradian, the next generation battery solutions company, have either established a presence in India or are expanding their business here. Today, you'll hear from one of the United Kingdom's top EV companies that really is in the forefront of the production of electrically driven vehicles for the commercial sector, including passenger transport business operations. That is London EV Company Limited, LEVC, which is leading the transformation in eliminating vehicle emissions. Through the use of the latest electric drivetrain technology, advanced materials, the iconic traditional black cab, yes, referred to around the world as the London taxi, is going green. Let's take a look at what we're doing in West Bengal. This is really important and exciting too. Mobility, as we know, is evolving. India's great challenge, and all over India, we see cities and businesses leading that change. The government of West Bengal has already undertaken several initiatives for mobility that are truly pioneers in India, and it's drafted the state electric vehicle policy. Kolkata has been internationally acclaimed by its peers in the C40, its leadership work amongst Indian cities on electrification of public transportation systems. And we've got UK companies such as Go Zero e-bikes, which has set up its manufacturing hub in West Bengal, and EO Charging, which is already looking to expand its operations in the state. Ahead of COP26, we are committed to working even more closely with Kolkata Municipal Corporation, Government of West Bengal, in initiatives to accelerate statewide adoption of electric mobility and to bring in innovative strategies that can draw on our experience and the lessons we've learned in the UK, innovative technologies and schemes to enhance space transition, creating greener jobs and cleaner air. I now want to quickly say a thing about business, because today I really do want to urge businesses to join in making progress in these vital areas. Many of you I know have already done so. For those who haven't, you can do so by signing up to the EV100 initiative by the Climate Group, and you'll hear more from them today, by committing to swap polluting vehicles for electric. It's not only good for the planet, believe me, it's very good for the planet, but it's great for business too. In 2018, Anand Mahindra told the World Economic Forum, everything that our group of companies has done to try to improve energy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions has given us a return. And today we have Anirban Ghosh, Chief Sustainability Officer from Mahindra Group, and Ms. Hannah Fife from the London Electric Vehicle Company with us. I'm very much looking forward to hearing from them to set out their case from business and indeed the case for business. I also urge all businesses and investors to sign up to the Race to Zero campaign and commit to zero emissions by 2050. Please join the 1,400 businesses, 74 investors who are already on board, and they include Mahindra Heavy Engines, JSW Energy, and Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. Let me conclude by saying the stakes are very high. The world is at a tipping point. If the global community doesn't take action now, decisive action now, we're going to do irreparable damage to our planet. In developing effective vaccines for SARS-CoV-2 in record time, and in a time no one would have thought possible a year ago, the international community has shown the power of common purpose and collective action. The United Kingdom and India, through Oxford University, AstraZeneca, and Serum Institute of India, have been at the forefront of that effort. We, the United Kingdom and India, working with the broader global community, can do the same with climate change. A cleaner, a greener, a healthier, and a more prosperous world is possible. There is no more cause. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick. In your introductory address, you have really gone through the way the UK is moving fast in promoting this e-vehicle, and also you have correctly mentioned about that the basic task what is required is the political will. And as there is a definite program and target for converting all the vehicles, the transport thing to this e-form within time frame of 2030, 2035 as we are speaking, and with the zero emission target, that is really give a way forward how things should move. There have been a huge investment also planned. You have correctly mentioned about the necessity of research and the innovation, and also invited for investment in this particular respect. You mentioned about because nothing can emerge without proper collaboration. So knowledge collaboration between the countries, and particularly the way things are happening in West Bengal, you are finding a hope and lot of optimism is there in your introductory speech. Thank you, Nick. And the decisive action, the way you have concluded, the decisive action with optimism is the real flavor in which direction the society at large should move so that we can see a zero emission and a future which will be much more sustainable for the future generation. That's probably our task today. Thank you, Nick. Thank you again. We are waiting for Rajanvir Singh Kumar. As you know, he will be joining at any point of time. Meanwhile, we have with us today the Public Affairs Manager, the London Electric Vehicle Company, Mrs. Hannah Fenner, and probably we will listen from the actual field what is happening, and so I would request Hannah to speak on the strategies and what are the new age electric cars and vans you are thinking of. Thank you. Please.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me today as well. So I'm Hannah Finer, I'm the Public Affairs Manager for LEVC, so the London Electric Vehicle Company. We're more commonly known as LEVC. So I'll give you a bit of an introduction to our company, our business, we've come from and our journey very quickly, and then I'll go into a bit more about strategies, challenges and solutions to electrification and decarbonisation for electric vehicles. So very quickly, an introduction to LEVC. So in one way, shape or form, we've been around for over 100 years, manufacturing, as Nick said, the famous London black taxi. We were actually bought by our current parent company, Geely, in 2013. And what that's really meant for the business is that we've seen over £500 million worth of investment since then. And we're now Geely's main research and development base for EV technologies in the UK. And what that really means is we have an absolutely fantastic, brand new, state-of-the-art factory in Coventry near Birmingham in the UK. It's the first purpose-built dedicated electric vehicle factory in the UK, and that's something we're extremely proud of. And we actually have a capacity of up to 20,000 vehicles a year. So although we're only producing a portion of those at the moment, we expect to see very high demand for commercial electric vehicles across the next couple of years, and we hope to be able to fulfill that 20,000 number. So as many of you know, we launched our electric black taxi in 2018, and there's now over 3,500 of these in London. And I like to say, or maybe joke, that our technology in that vehicle has been tested in one of the hardest, most robust markets in the world, and that's the London black cab trade. And that technology has been so successful, the taxi drivers love it so much, the flexibility it gives them, whilst also saving money, whilst also reducing emissions. We've actually used exactly the same technology and put it in an electric van, which went into production in November 2020, so last year. So despite all the challenges of COVID last year, we've gone into production with that electric van, and we expect to see a large growth from that product over the next couple of years. So that's a brief introduction. So I'll go on to, before going on to strategies and solutions, I thought I'd outline some of the challenges that we see with electrification at the moment, and why we think, what we think needs to be the solution to those challenges. So the first one, again, as Nick mentioned, that we see a lot of consumer anxiety around electric vehicles at the moment. So that's in relation to both the price of electric vehicles and also infrastructure. So range anxiety. So whatever your opinion is on electric vehicles, in order to get a mass switch over to electric, infrastructure is going to have to be expanded. There's no argument with that. And obviously something that policymakers are battling with at the moment is, well, what's the point of installing infrastructure now if ranges are going to be, 500 miles in 5 years time or 10 years time? I think we're gonna look at ranges on electric vehicles like we look at mobile phones now. 20 years ago they were a bit bulky, and now we've got a computer in our pocket. I think the innovation we're going to see over the next 5-10 years is going to be massive, but that doesn't remove the infrastructure need today. And in addition, there is still the massive barrier to overcome about price parity. So electric vehicles are currently more expensive than their diesel and petrol counterparts, and that is something that's going to have to be overcome. So I'll come back to these points when I talk about the solutions, but moving on to the second area that I think is quite a challenge at the moment is what we're seeing developing in some countries, which is patchwork regulations. So at the moment, even within countries, we're seeing sort of a mix and match of policies and regulations, which can prove really confusing for the consumer. So if you do take the example of the UK, on a national level, you've got the amazing decision to end the sale of petrol and diesel vehicles by 2030, but you've only got the electric vehicle grant system guaranteed until 22-23. So there's already a mismatch at national level. And then when you look even further down on a local and regional level, you've got clean air zones already in force. So London's got its own ultra low emission zone, and though that's being expanded in October this year. And then you've got other cities which are still yet to bring in their clean air zones. And all of these different sort of regional regulations have their own criteria. So what that goes to do for consumers, it builds a really confusing picture and prevents them from potentially switching to a cleaner ultra low emission vehicle today, because they mistrust policymakers, they mistrust the journey. They aren't 100% sure that the vehicle they're switching to today won't be outlawed from driving in their local area in a year's time, or they're going to suddenly be hit with £6 a day charge for driving in their local area. So it's a bit of a confusing picture for consumers at the moment. So I'll come back to that second challenge in a minute. And then the third challenge that we're seeing at the moment is a misunderstanding of EV technologies that are out there. I'm not sure how many people on this call know a huge amount about EV technology, so I'm sorry if I'm telling you things you already know. But as you all know, loads of labels get bandied about. At the moment when I'm watching TV, there's 1,000,001 adverts on for electric vehicles. Hybrids, mild hybrids, range extended vehicles, full battery electric. I work in the industry. Sometimes it's confusing for me, so it's going to be confusing for consumers as well that don't have that expertise, that background. This is all really new to them. So taking LEVC vehicles as an example, we're commonly classed as a hybrid technology, but actually there are two key types of hybrids, which are series and parallel hybrids. So the parallel hybrid has a traditional petrol or diesel internal combustion engine, and the consumer, the driver, can choose which one to drive with, the battery or the engine, and that engine actually propels and drives the vehicle forward. Taking a series hybrid, and that's LEVC's vehicles, you've got a vehicle with a battery and a range extender, which is a very small petrol engine which maintains the battery charge in situations where a driver can't get to a charge point. So in an emergency, in a backup situation where they cannot get to a charge point, they can use that range extender to maintain the battery charge until they get there. That small petrol engine, the range extender, it never ever drives the vehicle, and is a really, really clean technology which provides flexibility for commercial operators especially to switch to a super environmentally friendly vehicle today whilst infrastructure is still being expanded. And even when you use the range extender, it produces maybe only 10% of the CO2 emissions emitted by a traditional internal combustion engine vehicle. So those are some of the challenges that we're seeing at the moment. So I'll quickly set out what LEVC as an electric vehicle manufacturer thinks are some of the strategies and solutions to those. So I talked about consumer anxiety earlier. One of those is range anxiety. I think expansion of infrastructure, everyone always talks about it, but that will be really, really key in overcoming range anxiety, especially for commercial operators. Quite simply, for businesses, time is money. The risk of breakdown and uncertainty is not acceptable. Even, you know, if you're reducing your emissions, if you're meeting other targets, losing on money, you know, you can't switch the two. You have to be able to reduce your emissions and continue your business operations. So that risk is just not acceptable for commercial operators at the moment, the risk of breakdown or uncertainty. We don't manufacture passenger cars, but something that I do know of is for passenger cars that we often come across the argument that, oh, well, only a certain number of journeys are ever over this mileage. That argument's just not cutting through. The reason consumers have a car is for flexibility. They want to have the assurance they can get in their vehicle and drive. They may only go from London to Scotland once a year or once every 3 years, but they still want to be able to do that. So we need that infrastructure to overcome that sort of range anxiety. We will need that to see mass electric vehicle uptake. With regards to vehicle price, we've been really impressed as a manufacturer with the UK government's grant scheme for commercial electric vehicles. So at the moment, you can get a grant for £7,500 to take off the price of your vehicle, of your plug-in taxi. And you can also get up to £8,000 to reduce the price of your electric van as well. So those grants have been really integral to electric vehicle uptake. But what we'd really like to see is a bit of a longer term plan. And I know that's something the government are working on at the moment. They've only ever been guaranteed for a relatively short time. And at the moment, again, have only been guaranteed up to 22, 23. So I think consumers need to have the reassurance that this is a long-term thing. Electric vehicles aren't just something niche and, you know, kooky to invest in over the next 2 years. They really need to see that journey to net zero. And we'd like to see a long-term roadmap with those sort of grant schemes included in that. I mentioned earlier a patchwork of regulations, and what we as a manufacturer would like to see is a really joined up national and regional approach, a solid roadmap to electrification. That patchwork effect is actually quite detrimental to uptake of EVs, and it's actually a really important mechanism, regulations and policy, a really important mechanism of increasing EV uptake. I often liken it to the carrier bag charge in the UK. Unless you force the hand of consumers, they're not going to change their behaviour. As soon as the 10p carrier bag charge was brought in the UK, you suddenly started to see a massive change in behaviour, myself included, no longer being lazy, taking those bags out of the kitchen and taking them to the shop. Obviously, the automotive sector is a little bit different, but one fantastic example is London here, where every newly licensed taxi in London, black taxi, must be electric. Now that's Transport for London, the Mayor of London's decision to bring in those regulations. But like I said, we've now got almost 4,000 electric taxis in London, and lots of other regions in the UK are now thinking along the same lines. It's just taking them some time. So we've seen amazing electric taxi uptake in London, but other places outside of London are being a bit slower. And that just shows how integral and important that regulatory mechanism is in terms of changing behaviour. And then the last thing I'll leave you with today, going back to my point about misunderstanding of technologies, and I'll leave you with this. And it's something that a stakeholder said to me last year, and it's stuck in my head ever since, and I hope it sticks in yours today, that this journey, it's not about the jump to full battery now. That is great. That is great if you can get a full battery electric vehicle that meets your needs, especially as a business, especially as a commercial operator. If you can find that, that's great. But more often than not, businesses are coming up against not being able to find a vehicle that meets their needs. So what this journey is about, it's about how many miles can we electrify today. It's about the percentage of miles that we can electrify and how can we grow that over the next 10 years. So there really shouldn't be a perception of series hybrid vehicles as bad, or hybrid vehicles as evil, and battery electric vehicles as good, or, you know, angelic. Both technologies will have their benefits, and it's all about trying to get the consumer into one. Whichever one it is, it's all about reducing those emissions and increasing the percentage of electrified miles. And like I said, specifically for commercial vehicles, the ranges needed today may not exist for another 5-10 years. But what we can do is we can provide that really clean, green vehicle today. And one of the ways that we know we can increase that percentage of cleaner, greener vehicles today is making sure that these ultra low emission vehicles aren't excluded from benefit schemes. They receive the same sort of benefits as, you know, decreased import duties as fully electric vehicles, the same sort of financial incentives, which is what the UK grant scheme has at the moment, the sort of same benefits as full battery electric vehicles at this time, whilst we are in our journey to full electric. So I think I'll just leave you with that today, that we see one of the biggest solutions and strategies to electrification in this journey is that ultra low emission technologies should be acknowledged as playing a really, really vital bridging role in the journey to meet net zero with fully electric vehicles. And I'll leave you with that.
Thank you, Hannah. It's really, really, you have mentioned not only about the technology, your organization, but also mentioned about the strategy. 100-year-old organization, having legacy and tradition of working in that organization is a matter of great pride. There is a definite, in spite of having such, pandemic, they have met the target of the production in 2020, as you have mentioned. And the issue is, yes, it is more expensive today, but the more important thing is how a proper combination of regulation and policy takes place. That is extremely important. And it's not the vehicle vis-a-vis infrastructure to be properly planned at the national level, because ultimately it will be on the road. So it has to go to the regional as well as the local level also. How really matching the requirement of local, regional, and then the supply would be. You mentioned about the misunderstanding, little bit of confusion of the technology in a sense of the hybrid one, whether it is a series or a parallel. I liked it. And the backup strategy. Of course, what you have mentioned is the right thing. I would say the most right word is the flexibility. And on the question of pricing also, it is not what exactly the immediate is. It is a long-term plan which will be required. As from you, we understand that 22-23 may be a typical year where we are aiming to achieve many things. I can only say with what you have ended, that it is not the question of good or bad, right or wrong. It is the question of proper, optimized, flexible, and a combination of the best. City of Kolkata, where we are holding this event, has been electrified just after the city of London was electrified. It was, if you go by the history, I believe the way London is progressing on the e-vehicle, city of Kolkata will also not be far behind. We will just follow, if not in the same pace. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, for your real, thought-provoking, excellent speech. I would now request Mr. Anirban Ghosh, Chief Sustainability Officer, Mahindra Group, to deliver his keynote address on EV ecosystem, because ultimately if we do not have the proper supply chain ready, how can we think of a complete zero emitting clean transport and clean energy, what Mr. Debe Mukherjee has started the discussion with. So Mr. Ghosh, please.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. It's an honor to be a part of this conversation. and it's quite a challenge to speak to you after Hannah's presentation, which can perhaps be described as electrifying. Through the conversations, you must have picked up that electric vehicles are inevitable. We are only talking about when will they become commonplace. We are no longer talking about if they will become commonplace. And that's the main reason why electric vehicles are inevitable, is because electric vehicles will offer a value proposition which is far superior to an IC engine vehicle. You and I will enjoy driving, will enjoy sitting in an electric vehicle because of the kind of vehicle it is going to be. And therefore, over time, you can expect electric vehicles to become inevitable. We know that they are a little bit more expensive now, but over time, these costs will come down as the costs of batteries go down, and the vehicle price of comparable electric and IC engine vehicles will become very similar. With governments like the UK putting their money behind it, this day will come sooner rather than later. We've seen this happening in other technologies. Solar energy today is common around the world. Germany's effort to scale up solar energy in their country brought prices down for solar panels for all of us. Similarly, India's initiative in LED lights brought prices down for everyone around the world, and today LED lights have become commonplace. Going forward, the effort that governments like UK are putting behind electric vehicles will help scale up the industry, bring costs down, and make electric vehicles inevitable around the world. Actually, electric vehicles are already gaining ground. There were 1 million vehicles on road in 2016, and there are 7.2 million electric vehicles on road now. Here in Kolkata, rickshaws have all become electric. The place where I stay in Salt Lake, there is no rickshaw which does not run on batteries anymore. And the experiments being done in Newtown with electric mobility ecosystem in Kolkata is setting the base for a much greater ecosystem in the coming times. Some use cases of electric vehicles are viable already. When we look at last mile goods transport and we look at shared mobility, electric vehicles are viable already. There are thousands of electric taxis running in Bangalore today, taking people from their place of work to the airport and back. That is a use case that is entirely economically viable. There are many other experiments that are going on in the area of last mile goods transport and shared mobility, because at a certain scale of a little more than 100 or 120 kilometers per day, this use case is profitable already. If you were to travel to Delhi, you can actually hire an electric taxi to travel around the city, and you will not have any problem despite the fact that distances in Delhi are quite large. In recent times, the Mahindra Group has launched a service through its logistics arm called e-delivery, where there is a three-wheeler powered by batteries, which is used for last mile goods transport. So these are all very good signs that some use cases of electric vehicles are viable already, and this will enable other use cases to become viable as time goes on. The transition path for electric vehicles in India is through two-wheelers and three-wheelers. And that's because 80% of the vehicles sold in India are either two-wheelers or three-wheelers. While 1.56 lakh vehicles were sold in India, electric vehicles in 2019, 40 lakh are expected to be sold in 2025. This actually gives us a huge opportunity when we start small. It gives us an opportunity to build up competence in the ecosystem in EV components, right from electric motors to battery packs and even power electronics. It gives us an opportunity for localization, for cost efficiencies, and it creates the possibility of a $5 billion ecosystem in EV industry and EV components going forward here in India. Actually, as we transition through two-wheelers and three-wheelers towards larger electric vehicles, it gives us an opportunity to build on some of India's conventional strengths. We can replicate the success we've had in small cars. We can replicate the success we've had in software development. Because as we move into electric vehicles, a large part of the value is actually software. Another very large part of the value is in embedded electronics, another area in which India has developed very rapidly in the recent past. Of course, there will be opportunities in cell chemistry development, cell manufacturing, semiconductor devices, and high voltage connectors, which as of now we don't do much in India. But as we go from two-wheelers and three-wheelers to larger vehicles, we will have the time to develop competence in this. But we already can leverage the strengths that we have in embedded electronics, in software development, and the success we have in small cars, which we have built up over the last few years. Now, there are many anxieties associated with electric vehicles today, given the current state of technology, and Hannah has explained some of them very, very nicely. There is one where people talk about the life of the battery and therefore wonder whether the cost of the electric vehicle is exorbitant, given that the battery will have to be changed after some time. Well, you know that the Mahindra Group has had electric vehicles running on the road for more than 10 years now. There are vehicles which have covered 200,000 kilometers without having to change their battery. Overall, electric vehicles from the Mahindra stable have covered 230 million kilometers very reliably. It's probably the most reliable vehicle in our entire portfolio. So the life of battery, if I were to buy an electric car today, life of battery will not be an anxiety that I will have. Will I have range anxiety? Yes. Hannah's explained why. Yes, of course, there may be many, many journeys that I can do. Probably going to office and coming back is not going to worry the car at all. But if one wants to take a longer drive, then today there may be issues because along the way it may not be easy to charge batteries. This is what limits the use cases which are economically viable today for people. But we know that in a period of 5 to 7 years' time, the range that vehicles will start doing, once it starts doing 350 kilometers or 400 kilometers on one charge, it will almost be as good as a fuel tank in most of our cars today. Sometimes people talk about the fact that electric vehicles are not really clean because it uses energy from thermal power plants. Well, there are enough studies to show that given the energy mix today in India, it is already cleaner than IC engine vehicles under some conditions. We don't have the time, so I can't do terms and conditions apply in great detail, but all I wish to leave with you is there are many situations where it is already cleaner. But what is most important is that the mix of energy in the Indian grid is becoming cleaner by the day. And therefore, the vehicles that we run on batteries will also be cleaner by the day when we look at overall emissions. We worry about charging infrastructure. Mr. Ray has already talked about it. It is a chicken and egg situation. Today, if you put chargers out, they're underutilized. But as the population of cars increase, the charging infrastructure will increase. And we will probably never have a problem on trying to charge a vehicle. When I drive electric vehicles in the city of Mumbai, I typically charge them either at office or at home. And I've never had any difficulty in going from anywhere to anywhere in the city as of now. The Mahindra Group has taken an interesting approach towards enabling the country move towards electric mobility. You may know that we acquired a company which had a vehicle called Reva. That vehicle improved and it was called the E2O. Most of the initial electric taxis on Indian streets have been E-Veritos, a vehicle whose platform we inherited from Renault. We ourselves created a goods carrier called E-Supro, and that was the pioneer in electric goods transport in India. But that has now evolved into a three-wheel vehicle called Trio. Trio uh, is in the portfolio of our logistics arm, works for Amazon, works for other e-commerce countries, and it is used extensively for last mile goods transport today. There is the most affordable electric car in the country, the eKUV, but perhaps where we think India will benefit the most at this point in time is by creating electric vehicle platforms for manufacturers to build their cars on. And so we've created a 350 volt MESMA platform. The name of the platform is MESMA. And we expect electric vehicles to be built on this platform and other platforms like this. And companies in India to become solution providers so that these solutions can be used to build cars anywhere around the world. Actually, electrification of vehicles is going to change the way automobiles are made around the world. They will make organizations important who are really not part of the automobile ecosystem earlier. But these are changes we are going to see as we go over time. As I said in the beginning, electric vehicles will become inevitable, and you and I will be using electric vehicles either as taxis or as personal vehicles, or we will see them as goods vehicle in not a very long time later, perhaps 5 to 6 years time, they will be ubiquitous. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anirban. You have enlightened us on the recent developments where we are, particularly with respect to the electric vehicle. It is, of course, a value proposition, the way you have started. Expensive is a relative term, in my view, because we need to also count for the total direct and indirect cost while we will be speaking for a price of an item. Charging facility, yes, there is a debate because ultimately the charging source, whether it is from the fossil fuel burning or rightly you have said that how much the solar power, solar energy can be utilized for that. There is an ambitious plan for the country to have many more electric vehicles, and rightly said, the rickshaws, particularly the small way transport, the experiment has been successful in Newtown, you have also mentioned. You also mentioned about the e-delivery. It is, of course, a value proposition again. And today's world actually speaking for the total solution. So it's not when we will be think of a strategy of a policy, we have to really speak for a solution in totality. On the overall perspective, we find a very bright future with the technological development happening in electronics and software. You assured that battery life will no more be an anxiety. And I can tell you, take this opportunity that to promote and facilitate, we in CSC, being the service provider on electricity for the whole of city, we have installed the charging station at our own office. And as an experiment and as something to really practice, we have started.
We will have to unmute you, Mr. Ray.
Continuously on mute. Okay.
No, actually, you were not on mute earlier. There was somebody else speaking, so they tried to mute her and ended up muting you as well.
Thank you. But now I find that Mr. Rajanbir Singh Kapur, IAS Managing Director, West Bengal Transport Corporation, has joined. We are really privileged to have his presence here because he is one we know from the core of the heart that who is facilitating this process in whole of the state. And if we can have the leader like him with us, we will definitely see the light for a huge crowd of e-vehicle, I will say, the efficient use of e-vehicle in near future to come. So, Mr. Rajendra Singh Kapoor, please.
So, a very warm good evening to all of you. Gautam, thank you for making me feel important, although we believe completely otherwise. Just came back from the Ganga Sagar inspection. We had gone in the morning, and that's why I got a little delayed in joining my session. I apologize, but there's nothing I could have done about that. To be very frank, I think we have people from the British DHC here, Hemanti Nick, and people from Keria there, people from various organizations, Bengal Chambers. I'll ask a simple question to all of you, not as a bureaucrat, not as an officer, just like a common guy, So whenever you are buying a car, let's assume whether Nick buys it in London or Hemanti buys it in Calcutta, or I buy it here or Delhi or Chandigarh, other than the looks and the entire thing, the most important element that we look for is the mileage. In Hindi, you can say we basically come to कि 1 लीटर में कितने किलोमीटर गाड़ी चलती है. So whatever your economic strata is, whatever your intellectual IQ, whatever you may say, so at that time you never ask whether my car is environmentally, good or bad. So we may have seminars like this, we may have webinars, we may have meetings, but at the end of the day, when all of us personally buy a vehicle, the most important thing we ask is, what is the mileage? If I'm spending X amount of rupees on the fuel, what am I going to get out of it? So I think any policy, any intervention from the government, private sector, other stakeholders can only be materialized into a success if we are able to come up with infra where electric vehicles can compete or surpass the fossil fuel vehicles in terms of the cost. Now, you may say it will take time. I agree. It certainly would take time because we are shifting from a paradigm of fuel-based vehicles which have been running from decades, if you see. It's almost so many decades that fossil fuel-based vehicles have taken over in the whole world. But I'm sure that once we reach there, then automatically you'll see people migrating towards an EV. Because the common parlance anywhere in the world, so I don't say this is just Calcutta, anywhere in the world would be, oh, you know what? He bought this EV car and he told me that he's saving $4,000 a month. Or, he's saving about 100 pounds a month or 200 pounds a month or say $500 a month. So anywhere in the world, when any of your friends tell you that, it makes a lot of material sense because the monies that you save on the fuel or on any of the input, you could be using elsewhere. So this could be 5 to 10 years down the line when we actually have a system. Now, till the time we reach that level, let me tell you, Gautam, I heard just one speaker before this, but with all the limited experience I've gained in my portfolio over the last 1 year, yes, we are working on charging infrastructure. Yes, we are working on giving you an apparatus. You would want tax incentive. Somebody will say registration tax waiver kar dijiye. Somebody will say let's get away done. Give some subsidy, give some incentives. I think the biggest thing would be to have an ecosystem. Just putting things on paper, I'm sure we are coming up with a draft EV policy. It's happening in our department and it's revolving around these sort of things, giving SOPs to people so that they can, migrate towards electric vehicles. But I think that is still not the end of the story. The story would end when actually you create an ecosystem wherein everything is interconnected, So let's assume I want to buy an EV vehicle. So the moment I want to buy an EV vehicle, firstly, the awareness of where to buy, when to buy, production facilities. Then I must have, whenever you buy a vehicle, on our mind is post-buying maintenance. We all think, if I buy a vehicle, does it have a lot of workshops? If it gets problematic, where do I go? What is the cost of repairing it? So we have to work on that as well. It's not just about selling the vehicle and making a charger. It's also about, if I buy an electric car today, 2 months later, my charging apparatus gets, halted, what is the expenditure I have to make on getting it renovated, getting it started again? So these are very, very practical considerations that we must look into. If you're talking about public transportation, Gautam, if you're talking about, we're doing fairly well. Calcutta has got international acclaim and it hasn't come for nothing. We were given a lot of recognition by the IEA Paris this year. We got an award from C40 last year. And it's primarily because, you know why? I can tell you something very, very interesting today. Why has WTC been able to achieve exceptional results with electric vehicles? And the answer is our tramways. We conveniently forget the past. You know, we've been running tramways from 1873. And the Calcutta Tramway Company, which is a part of WTC now, has got exceptional electrical engineers. You have a workshop. You have people who have worked with electricity from decades. So we've been using this manpower to manage our EV apparatus. So when we use this manpower to run our EV apparatus, our manpower costs come down. And overall, you see that our operations are very efficient if you talk about the money spent and the money earned. And that is one of the reasons why we've been able to achieve a very successful EV public transportation in Calcutta. But if you talk about private vehicles, you know, private vehicles, people are not concerned about all these things. They are purely concerned about the ease of getting the vehicle, the price at which they'll get the vehicle, the cost of the charging, if it gets halted, and how much time can they get the vehicle repaired, and what will be the cost of the repair, and how much difficult it would be for them to repair it. You know, they have common, I talk to people across board, people don't even know how much a vehicle will run with charging. So I think we need to invest a lot of our energy on awareness. So I'll request Nick and I'll request Terry to please invest some sort of energy, fund, whatever, into awareness. You know, right now, people don't even know. You go on the road and do a survey, you ask people, what do they know about EV? Nothing. They do not even know how many kilometers can I run a car in one charging. They don't know the price of charging. They don't know where to get. So before you actually plan something, I think awareness generation is equally important. And yes, all of us have to work together in this. The power companies that are going to supply you electricity, the transport department that's going to give you incentives in terms of waivers of taxes, etc. The police that should know that this is also a car, the registration, then the maintenance, the private companies that are going to maintain and are going to sell the car. So it's a huge ecosystem that we're talking about. And later on, you know, the future is you would have personal charging stations in homes, just like the way they are in the West. So in the West or in many other countries, you know, people have personal charging stations in their garages, in their homes. So, you know, it's a multifarious sort of, you can say, movement. It cannot be done piecemeal. That today I talk about climate change, okay, tomorrow I talk about charging, then I do one webinar on thinking about how to run it. I think we got to work. So if I just summarize what I've said, I think if we need to make it a success, A, we have to think about the consumer. And the consumer wants the lowest cost and the maximum ease. B, we need to be holistic in our approach. We cannot think of one thing now and the other thing later. And C, because it's a multifarious thing, I think we need to take all stakeholders together so that the ecosystem is strong. Otherwise, it will come and it will fizzle down. So that's it from us. I think you've discussed the technical part, and you're going to have more sessions in the coming 1 hour. I would stress on these parts. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Excellent, Mr. Kapoor. In fact, coming straight from Ahmedabad, it only speaks about your passion and commitment to the cause. You have rightly said about the consumer. Ultimately, it is the consumer. And today's world, you have mentioned, it is not only a person buying a car, electric vehicle, he will think about the maintenance, he will think about the charging stations, he will think about the cost of, running the car, he will think about the price, mileage, speeding up, convenience, comfort, branding, vintage, everything he will think about when he will opt for e-vehicle. So we have to be prepared. At the same time, at the national level, on the holistic plan, there has to be manufacturing capability, regulation, policy, capability, a total solution, a planning infrastructure, skill, and also the awareness, rightly you have said. So unless we have satisfaction on the consumers, meeting all their demands, and a holistic approach at the policy level, it will be difficult. It will be difficult, whatever the ambitious plan may be. And that speaks for the ecosystem. And rightly said that we are also very proud of West Bengal Transport Corporation, who has become, who has been appreciated and acknowledged and received accolades for fast promoting the public vehicle, publicly e-vehicle. And that's probably the heritage, the tradition, the capability which they are carrying with the tramways. That is one of the outcome of that. Of course, there is another outcome which, with humbleness, Mr. Kapoor has not mentioned the leadership what Mr. Kapoor has given behind it. So, with this, we have listened to all the expert and the eminent speakers in the inaugural session. I would request Mrs. Hoibanti Poddar, Senior Energy, Climate Change and Urban Advisor, COP26, Zero Emission Vehicle Transition India Lead, Prosperity Team, UK Trade, Economic and Prosperity, to address the gathering with her vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roy. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presence and for the excellent moderation. And thank you to all our speakers for such passionate, electrifying, if I may say, and I'm stealing this word from Anirban, and hopeful addresses as we begin this year. We are really grateful to Mr. Kapoor, and I wanted to, acknowledge his presence first, because he was making time. He just came down from a very important engagement, and he was in a chopper while we started the event. So very big thank you to him for making time to, be part of this forum and highlighting the importance of the robust integrated ecosystem and the importance of awareness to enhance the uptake of EVs. In fact, I would like to mention here that we are working with the Government of India, particularly with Niti Aayog, to, on a web portal to raise awareness on electric mobility. And we are very hopeful that it is going to be a one of its kind, one-stop solution, shop-stop solution provider, so that consumer is able to understand the choices that he or she has. The reason that we are putting this forum together is that the actions that we take today in dialogue with the industries, with the businesses, the cities, the regions, the civil society organizations, this will determine the pace of global transition to zero emission vehicles. While the national context, the regional context, the local context may be different, the policy approaches may be different, but the transition will be faster and easier and lower cost for all if we work together. One of the key things that I wanted to highlight here is that Mr. Kapoor mentioned that, it is all about consumers and it is about affordability. And today's session is just not about cars. We are also trying to cover the importance of the adoption of electric vehicles across all the entire ecosystem. Adoption of vehicles by government, by businesses, by aggregated taxi operators, by by consumers like us. So firstly, I would like to thank you for addressing us. And many thanks to Bengal Chamber for collaborating with us for the program in the run-up to COP26. Our gratitude to Mr. Debi Mukherjee, President of Bengal Chamber, for such a hopeful address, making the point that a rapid global transition to zero-emission vehicles is vital to meet the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and Paris Agreement on Climate. Our heartfelt gratitude to His Excellency, Mr. Nick Lowe, for taking time out of his busy schedule to set the tone for the event. Dignitaries today highlighted the importance of innovation and for addressing the challenges around charging infrastructure, range anxiety, importance of clear roadmap and policies to enhance the uptake. And so our thanks to Ms. Hannah from LEVC for putting these issues together so nicely and brilliantly, and highlighting the strategic role that the government can play, not only to trigger the innovation aspect, but also to bring about the behavioral changes that is so very much needed. Our sincere gratitude to Mr. Anirban Ghosh for his address, and for highlighting how globally and in India, Mahindra is taking a lead in fast transforming the way we would commute and we would do our business. We have a galaxy of speakers today to deliberate on ways how to enhance the pace of transition. Going forward, we are really looking forward to hearing from them, and we will use this forum to coordinate our efforts. We want to act together to overcome any strategic or technical barriers that may be there, and accelerate the production of the affordable zero-emission vehicles and increase economies of scale. So we're really hoping that through these deliberations and through more strategic conversation, we would be able to boost investment, bring down the costs, and increase the uptake of EVs, and the many economic, social, and environmental benefits that it will bring. So thank you very much for being with us, and over to the next session. Thanks.
Thank you, Heymanti. Thank you. You have made my task easier. I mean, beautiful summing up and extracted the real salient points out of the discussions. And as we are running little late, not wasting any time, because you all are eager to listen to the eminent speakers, I would hand over to Suchishmita to take it forward.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all the dignitaries present in the inaugural session. Thank you, British Deputy High Commission, Kolkata, for partnering with us. Thank you, our sponsor, RPG Power Trading Company Limited. Here, we would like to play a video on clean transport before switching on to the next session. Hello, everybody. We will be going in another 2-3 minutes, reliving the next session. Um, Till then, we will welcome into our next session, which is infrastructure creation and business ready strategies. I would like to welcome all the speakers here. In this session, we have Mr. Sanjay Mukherjee, Vice President, Director, Technical CSC Limited, Ms. Divya Sharma, Executive Director, The Climate Group, Mr. N. Mohan, Deputy General Manager, Energy Efficiency Services Limited, Mr. Apruva Appan, Associate RE Mobility, World Business Council for Sustainable Development, and Mr. Alakhya Datta, Area Convener, Electricity and Fuels Group, the Energy and Resource Institute. We will wait for a few minutes to relight the session, then we can go ahead with the session. Okay, we are back on live with the other social medias. I will request Mr. Sanjay Mukherjee, Vice President, Director, Technical, CSC Limited, to address his session. Mr. Mukherjee, please.
Thank you, Shuchishmita. Good evening to all the dignitaries present in this forum. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
So I would like to present a few slides which will assist me in my talking. So I'll try to share my screen. Just bear with me for a minute or so. Okay, is it okay, Shuchishmita?
Yes, sir. You have given sharing rights. You can share your screen.
Okay. Is it visible? Are the slides visible?
Yes, sir. Perfectly okay.
Okay, for the ease of bandwidth problems, I'll put my video off. The slides will explain whatever I am talking. So for the timing, I'll put my video off. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you and good evening once again. So as Suchishmita has already told, this session is all about infrastructure creation and business readiness strategies. To start my discussion on a somewhat lighter note, I have some problem. I think the slides are not moving. Just bear with me for a moment. Slide. Now it's perfect. Okay. So as I was telling, to start my talk on a somewhat lighter note, I want to share this screen. See, we are discussing e-mobility, but it was already there from the start of the 20th century. Electric tram cars, as Mr. Kapoor already highlighted, the electric tram cars were there from the very early 20th century. It's still in operation, so it's nothing but e-mobility. Electric trains were there since 1925, and then the metro rail, that too first time in Calcutta in the country, it is running since 1984. And now we are talking about electric vehicles, which are normally battery operated vehicles or hybrid electric vehicles or plug-in hybrid vehicles. So now today, all our discussion, we are revolving around this fourth part. Okay. So just to start on a lighter note, now I'll progress. Now, the perceived challenges for EV adoption, a lot of discussion have already gone into this slide by the earlier speakers. See, one is travel range, the other one is the various options, and then the charging infrastructure, the battery technology, the maintenance and battery life, then high upfront cost. All such kind of things are perceived as the challenges for EV adoption. Okay. But the other conundrum that is doing around is that which will aid the other one. That is what I mean to say is that whether the EVs will aid the charging infrastructure to happen, or the charging infrastructure will aid adoption of more EVs. This is the thing that is doing round and round for the last few years. But we as we progress, I think it's not that much of a problem, because see, EV deployment scheme, if it has to happen, then it has to be a concerted effort from all the three vehicle segment, then charging infrastructure, and then the technology, the battery, the spares, the components. All of these three boxes should move in a concerted effort to make the EV deployment scheme faster. Now, since I represent a DISCOM operating in an urban setup, I'll do my talking more from a DISCOM's perspective, yet stay on the main subject of infrastructure creation. See, the Ministry of Power, Government of India, the guideline says that DISCOMs are going to be the nodal agency for setting up EV charging infrastructure, or for aiding or for approvals for developing the charging ecosystem. Now, having said that, let's find out that what are the three aspects that should go into setting up of these electric vehicle charging infrastructure. One is the technical or the operational aspects. The second one would be the commercial aspects. The third one would be the regulatory or the policy related aspects. Now, all these three should work in tandem to create a perfect ecosystem, which has to be, in the long run, economic and sustainable, because anything, whatever we discuss, definitely should be economic and win-win for all the major stakeholders. Now, if I talk about the technical operational aspects, I'll not go very deep into all these nuances of whatever is written in this slide, but I'll touch upon a very few important points. The identification of suitable nodes for EV charging stations. What I mean by this statement is that in urban setup, everybody knows that if I'm driving along a highway, to give me comfort, if I'm an EV owner, to give me comfort, I must have the knowledge that, okay, along the highway, these many charging stations are there at this point along the highway, because Ministry of Power guideline already specifies that along the highway, what should be the frequency of charging stations. So that is one part. But if I'm operating within a city, then where within the city the charging stations are there, where the charging stations should ideally be set up for commercial use, the routes, the important routes, all these are included in this statement while creating charging infrastructure. Now, the communication also will go to play a very important role. The communication, what I mean by the communication is that in order for the charging infrastructure to be very smart and interactive with the electricity grid, the communication infrastructure should be strong. Then, in order to put up charging stations or charging facilities, even by the public, members of the public at their homes, the proper connection agreements or connectivity regulations must be in place to enable or to take care all the regulatory and legal aspects of charging at homes or at commercial establishments. Then there are going to be some technical challenges once EV penetration happens at a larger scale. What I mean to say is here, in layman's term, more and more charging infrastructure penetration would go on polluting the electric vehicle grid, which will have a hidden cost in it, because the pollution to the electricity grid has to be set right by the DISCOMs with proper measures, which comes with a cost. So that has to be taken care of. The most important part, I'll jump the next point. The most important part is we talk about clean energy integration, RE integration, or the solar integration while powering the charging infrastructure. Now, without going into details, I think Anirban had already made a very important point that even if we are talking about more and more electric vehicle proliferation, and even if they are getting charged with thermal energy or energy from thermal power stations, let me assure you about one thing, that distributed pollution by IC engine cars all across the city is worse than the chimney emissions coming out of a concentrated thermal power plant. Now, chimney emissions, coming to chimney emissions, even if it is concentrated, but the other aspect is that the chimney emissions are also having its own share of stringent policy and guidelines by the environment experts, the environment ministry, the governments, and all such kind of authorities. The other aspect is that the generation fuel, that is coal, it is also becoming cleaner day by day. What I mean is that the specific consumption of coal to generate 1 unit of electricity is becoming lesser and lesser due to adoption of various kinds of technology. So even if we are charging electric vehicles from thermal power generation, it is not going to be a major problem, or not going to be a major lookout in the future. Now there are commercial aspects. Commercial aspects, we all know that business models must be in place properly so that all the stakeholders are in a win-win kind of situation. So I'll not deep dive into the nuances of this, because I think we have 10 minutes each to speak on. There are regulatory and policy related aspects. I'm also skipping this slide for the time being, and I'm going to the most important slide of my today's talk. See, this slide talks about if we think of EVs, there'll be either two-wheelers or three-wheelers or four-wheelers or big buses. Now let us see where is the infrastructure problem actually lying, or whether it is actually there or not, because we do a lot of talking. I showed in my earlier slides that people talk about which is going to push the which one, that is the electric vehicles will come first or the charging infrastructure will come first. I think that problem does not exist, because why I say so is that if you are talking about two-wheelers, the battery size is around 2 to 3 kilowatt hour, which is very small batteries. Range is around 35 to 70 kilometers. So it can be charged, if privately owned, it can be charged at homes by a simply 15 ampere socket. It can have battery swapping facilities. It can have charging day or night, and it is very highly flexible. And it is not going to be a problem. It is no challenge for a distribution network. Coming to three-wheelers, the situation is somewhat similar. Batteries are a slight bigger. Range is also bigger. It can charge itself day and night at homes or at fixed stations, or the battery swapping also can happen. It is also not going to be a major challenge for a distribution network operator. Now, if I come to four-wheelers can either be privately owned or commercially owned. The battery sizes would range from 15 to 80 kWh. 15 ideally for say Mahindra e-Veritas, 15 to 18, 15 to 18 kWh, either e-Veritas by Mahindra or the Tata Tigors, or a bigger size like the Hyundai Kona. So what I mean to say is that 80 kWh is Hyundai Kona. Someone is putting some comment there, but anyway, what I mean is that larger batteries and longer ranges. Typically, the four-wheelers e-Verito and Tigor have a range of 110 to 120 kilometers, and bigger size battery vehicles are having larger ranges. Now, within a city, for city commuters, some survey shows that average daily commute within a city is not more than 35 to 40 kilometers. So with one charge, I can even run for 2 to 3 days, and I can charge my vehicle in a slow mode at my home. So charging infrastructure for privately owned four-wheelers is even today not a problem. But if I'm talking about commercial vehicles, then commercial fleet owners or aggregators must be given a comfort that even if they charge at their garages during the night time, they must have some facility around the city to get top-up charging on a DC fast mode at specific locations, which they must know beforehand, at specific locations in and around the city, with proper route markings and all. This we may think that the flexibility is somewhat lower compared to privately owned vehicles, and it may put some amount of challenge to the discoms. Uh, why I say so is that putting up DC top-up charging various places of the city may be not a problem, but may require prudent planning, because space will be required, parking space will be required, and then knowledge of the network, where to put the charging station, that would be required. Now, if I come to buses, which have longer ranges, higher size batteries, buses can always get charged overnight in the depots. Okay, so if buses are getting charged in the depots, and somewhere if required within the city, I'm talking about, I'm not talking about highways, if within the city the buses have some comfort of getting charged very quickly in a DC mode, this also does not make it a very low level of flexibility. Flexibility will remain medium, and distribution companies should have the knowledge beforehand and should work hand in hand with organizations like the West Bengal Transport Corporation, that where to put up the top up charges if at all required within the city I'm talking about. As far as the current operating practices, I personally don't think that, see, already 80 odd or close to 100 buses are running in the state. Many of the buses are running in the city. I don't think they are getting charged anywhere other than the depots. So this is also not going to be a problem. Now, this slide, a study of this slide, a scrutiny of this slide, I think from the infrastructure angle would give us enough comfort that adoption of EVs are not going to be impaired by lack of charging infrastructure. So let me proceed. Now, as the DISCOM, as a responsible DISCOM operating in the city of Calcutta, we too are also ready. We have provided charging supply or charging connection to around 13 of the WBTC's bus depots where the fleet are getting charged while at depots. Then we have put up, along with KMC, 3 public charging stations at 3 locations, 3 very prominent locations in the city. We have put up captive charging stations at our corporate headquarters as well as one of our substations. So we are owning electric vehicles. Our officers are using those electric vehicles. Other initiatives that we have already taken are, we are working on installation of some charging stations at petrol pumps. We are engaging with EV manufacturer for in-house fleet changeover. We are contemplating seriously. Then we are advocating changes in the building rules and favorable policies so that big housing complexes can have some space reserved for putting up EV charging stations. And then we are promoting electric vehicles at various fora like the CREDI or the housing fairs. The idea being that big condominiums or big housing complexes have some place reserved for charging of electric vehicles. So this journey will continue, and the journey continues because whatever the time for whatever has come, nobody can stop it. And thank you. And let me assure you that the future is electric. And I'll stop as of now. Over to Suchishmita.
Thank you, Mr. Mukherjee. I would like to invite now Ms. Divya Sharma, Executive Director, the Climate Group, to present her talk.
Thank you, Suchishmita. I will now share my presentation. Just give me a second.
Yes, sure.
Let me know when you can see this. Is it visible?
Yeah, it's visible. You just, yeah, it's okay.
Great. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to this very important deliberation. I'm Divya Sharma. I'm Executive Director, Climate Group. And I will talk about a little about what we do, and then I will come to our business action campaign on electric vehicles. So we were founded in 2004. We are an international NGO with offices in Europe, North America, India, and China. And we work on the sidelines of business action, government and policy through our campaigns. And through that, we drive collaboration and impact in renewables, energy, productivity, and electric vehicle side of the things. So today I'm going to talk about our experiences of working with businesses very closely through our business action campaign on electric vehicles, which we called as EV100. So EV100 is a global initiative bringing together forward-looking companies which are committed to accelerating the transition to electric vehicles and making electric transport the new normal by 2030. So members are increasing demand, influencing policy and driving mass rollout, helping to make electric vehicles more rapidly affordable for everyone. At present, we have about 92 global members, which is about 5 million vehicles committed to electrify and about 5,400 charging locations. These are the global companies that are part of our EV100 campaign, and these are our Indian companies that are part of our EV100 companies that also include BSES Rajdhani Power Limited, BSES Yamuna Power Limited, State Bank of India, Wipro, and our recent companies that have come on board with us is Flipkart, the first e-commerce company to sign up for EV100, and Mindspace REIT, which is a real estate company. Now, Flipkart in particular has taken a target of moving to 100% electric vehicle usage by 2030. Just to reiterate on the commitment that these businesses come with, there is a quote that I would like to make here from Kalyan Krishnamurthy ji, who is the CEO of Flipkart Group. And he says that with the scale that they have and the reach that they have as a company and biggest e-commerce company in India, they believe that they can play a significant role in fast-tracking the adoption of electric vehicles, but also making clean mobility mainstream by working closely with key stakeholders within the ecosystem. And as my previous speaker said, that the future is electric, and I completely agree with him what he said. So in terms of the commitments that companies that follow EV100 these are the commitments. It's about how many percentage would they commit to, so they can electrify 100% or electrify 50%. For logistic companies, usually all urban or last mile delivery should be EVs. And the commitment that has to be made is also that for leasing companies, the commitment would be to switch customer fleet as well as own corporate. And it requires EVs in the service contracts also. For example, where your business operates via third-party fleet service, you will have to make sure that they also adopt electric vehicles. Plus, in terms of providing infrastructure for charging, so workplace and customer charging in all feasible locations will have to be looked at by the member committee who is becoming part of this campaign, which is a global campaign. So these commitments include battery electric vehicles. They also include plug-in hybrid electric vehicles and extended range electric vehicles and hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles. In terms of the commitment process and criteria, we look at global or group level commitment, which can be made, and substantial fleet or charging commitment has to be made. As I said, that they have to provide charging infrastructure. Now, there is a annual fee, and there are new membership offers that are coming up. We also help companies create their roadmap to electrify their vehicle fleet. And we also have an annual reporting process. So basically what we want is to understand the impact and also provide that platform to these companies who are signing up for our program to showcase their work and to showcase how quickly and efficiently they are chasing the targets that they have come up with. And of course, there are so many engagement opportunities because this is a global platform. In terms of core benefit that this program offers, we give chance to our member companies for profiling and positioning their leadership, which is sustainability leadership, their climate action leadership. We provide them policy and market engagement, and we provide them peer learning and closed door working groups. Through that, we provide them chance to understand, learn, and implement, contextualize systems and implement them. Now, the question that was asked to me when I was invited for this particular deliberation was as to what is the motivation of businesses to come on board for such a program, and what future does it hold in terms of building that mass and momentum for EV deployment in India. So one, and this is all from our experience of working with these companies in India. One is that the businesses that we work with or are talking to at the moment want to align action with the national agenda on climate change. They want to be seen as rising leader on sustainability across different sectors. And they want to showcase green growth to their investors and shareholders. So it makes a lot of business sense to these businesses because they can showcase that they are on the right side. Besides this, the companies learn and leverage from other strong global member networks and engage with the highly vibrant ecosystem of civil society and think tanks who are working in these areas, who are doing research and coming up with innovation and technologies to make this transition more commercially viable and, of course, implementable, and meet the new norm in the Indian business circle, which is about sustainability and which is about being aware of climate action and supporting government on climate action. One more thing that I would like to add here is that our member companies continue to leverage their commitments to create meaningful business impact. As I said, it should make business sense at the end of the day and generate necessary visibility, not only at a national level, but also at a global platform, which we provide to them, and to encourage other businesses to take action. The climate disclosure project that Climate Group does with CDP and their India annual report indicates that Indian companies are acknowledging the role of ESG and particularly broad level oversight of climate related issues. So the recent CDP global scoring has 4 Indian companies rated as A on tackling climate change, and companies adopting sustainability measures and taking climate conscious decisions are doing better than their peers on key financial indicators also, which is a very good sign, and I think quite motivating. More and more leading Indian businesses are committing to goals of net zero and aim to stand out in commitment on sustainability. And it is in line with Government of India's position to be seen as leader on climate action and going above and beyond their 2 degrees centigrade Paris Agreement target. In November 2020, announcement was made on the India CEO Forum on Climate Change to develop a long-standing and sustainable partnership between the government as well as and the private sector, led by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate. So Climate Group's campaigns are meaningful, ambitious pathways to meet these very ambitious goals that we have as a country and the businesses that we work with. But it is not without challenge, I would say, and I would bring to fore in this slide and the next that what are the drivers of going electric and what are the top barriers towards going electric. So in terms of drivers, as I said, there is this consensus that by going electric, there is a huge potential for GHG reductions. And there are reputational benefits also, because now it has started making business sense. People want to be working, doing trade internationally as well as within India with the companies who stand out for sustainability, who stand out for business ethos that are towards possible green growth. Also, it has a lot of potential to reduce local air pollution. And we know that air pollution is now touching every household. It has a lot of health benefits to switch to EVs and reduce GHG emissions. And there is also a potential for financial savings going forward. And technology change and technology innovation will only help in financial savings. So there is only an upward way now. Besides this, customer demand for EVs is rising, and customers are increasingly demanding robust climate action from businesses. And businesses also note that EVs already compete on cost in most cases, which makes economic case for them to be making more electric vehicles. And we keep up having questions from companies who are manufacturing electric vehicles on different aspects of innovation and demand from businesses that we work very closely with. But as I said, it is not without barriers. And the top barriers that we have researched upon and with our experience of working very closely with government as well as businesses on EVs is that there is lack of supply of light electric vehicles. Auto industry is not responding as fast enough for supply to match the demand. Lack of charging infrastructure, which previous speaker had very broadly elaborated. The capital cost of EVs is high at the moment, which needs to be looked at, and lack of attractive EV product offerings in target markets. In our study, we also found that lack of grid capacity, surprisingly, for charging was not much of a concern. And anxiety over new technology was also not much of a concern, which means that there is technology that is existing and we have to make way through policies and innovation so that we can hone on and tap that technology. Very recently, we did a breaking down of EV myths in India. So there are blogs that we have done, where a lot of research went into. And we came up with blogs in different aspects of EVs. So we see that there is a lot of myths around EVs, around charging, around technology, around economics of it, around vehicle experience in shared mobility and emissions and policy. And in our endeavor, we wanted to see that some of these myths are broken and awareness is created amongst key stakeholders, amongst the masses, to make sure that there is some improvement in the uptake of EVs. And definitely our idea is that more and more large businesses should come to fore and adopt EV 100 targets and transition from fossil fuel based motor vehicles to electric vehicles. So in its long-term vision towards a successful economic recovery, we as our country will have to look to include electric mobility as a critical socio-economic element. There is a lot of social sense also, and there is a build-up on economic sense to adopting this electric vehicles and transitioning. Electric mobility is today is ready for accelerated adoption by individual businesses and government at scale. We just need to grab this opportunity to make it work. And as we enter a new decade of recovery and climate action, it is critical for us to take steps towards making EVs the new normal by 2030. And when I say that, I also mean to say that strong policy framework needs to be established to encourage automotive sector to produce more EVs. And tighter vehicle emission standards, EV mandates, and government grants need to be extended and enforced, because there is a big interface between businesses, between adopters of EVs, and between how the policies help that kind of adoption and transition. And charge points need to be smart and interoperable between different vehicle makers, which is a one step ahead to providing charging infrastructure, but it will go a long way in making sure that because of infrastructure, there is no restriction on buying and deploying of electric vehicles. So this is what I wanted to make as a point today, and I'm very happy for any questions.
Thank you, Divya. I would now request Mr. N. Mohan, Deputy General Manager, Energy Efficiency Services Limited, to present his talk. Mr. Mohan, please.
So is my screen visible now?
Yes,
Hello.
sir. Yes, sir.
So good evening, everyone. So I'll try to keep my presentation a little brief because I think we're running late in the session. First of all, let me thank Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industries for giving us an opportunity to brief about like e-mobility and charging infrastructure, the projects which ESL has taken up in India. Just about the background about ESL, it's a joint venture company under Ministry of Power, and our promoters are like NTPC, Power Grid, Power Finance, and REC. So right now we have a subsidiary of ESL, which is Convergence Energy Services Limited, which is a 100% owned subsidiary of ESL, which is leading the vertical related to electric mobility, decentralized solar, carbon financing initiatives. So as you know, like ESL has done numerous energy efficiency initiatives with respect to lighting, with respect to building efficiency program, with respect to air conditioning program. And right now we're more focused towards electric mobility ecosystem. That is our core focus area, which we're trying to push in the coming years. Also, like ESL, we are focused towards building up some of the international ventures. So we have operations in other countries like UK, Malaysia, Thailand, Saudi Arabia, and also we have an operations in Vietnam and Myanmar as well. So about ESL e-mobility program, way back in 2018, we launched this national e-mobility program. So the basic objective of this program is to create demand for electric vehicles. In this process, we did the bulk procurement of electric cars, and the initial plan was to deploy these electric cars to the government institutions. So as you might be knowing, like in India, we have currently close to 500,000 IC cars which are used in the government departments for their regular projects and operations purpose. So citing this big volume of IC cars which are used in the government institutions, we launched this mobility program in order to help them in switching from non-electric vehicles to electric vehicles. So far we deployed close to 1,500 electric vehicles, and also we put up around 1,200 captive charging stations across the government departments. The business model was that we tried to do a financing model to these institutions, where we lease this electric cars to the institution on a monthly lease model, which is comparable to their existing IC expenditures. So in this process, it made it a win-win situation to both the organizations. Here, the client was able to at least make a transition towards electric vehicles without any major financial implications while switching to the electric vehicles on a monthly lease model. And this helped in creating an ecosystem for the electric mobility, and also like this created a huge market for the electric vehicles. And citing this big opportunity, the OEM started making more refined version of electric vehicles for Indian market. The image which you can show in the which you can see in this slide, it is basically one of the largest deployment by ESL. We have deployed close to around 70 long-range electric vehicles to institution in Kerala, the motor vehicle department. So here all the existing IC cars were replaced with electric cars as a green mobility initiative at the state level. This is the ESL National E-Mobility Dashboard. Here we try to capture the information with respect to EVs deployed by ESL. This is a real-time dashboard where one could see like how many electric vehicles have been deployed across India, and they can see like how many kilometers these electric vehicles have. So we can see like close to 3.6 crores kilometers we have covered, from deployed 1,500 electric. So if I talk about the key ecosystem challenges, I think one is the high upfront cost of the electric vehicles. Second is presently the electric vehicles, we have a very limited models which are offered by the OEMs as compared to the IC vehicles. And third and foremost being the lack of charging infrastructures. So if you look at these ecosystem challenges, I think the high upfront cost of the electric vehicles is somewhat addressed by the FAME 2 incentive, where based on the battery capacity of the electric vehicles, the subsidy is being given to the OEMs, so at least they can reduce the upfront cost of the electric vehicles. Similarly, there is a FAME 2 subsidy which is allowed for the EV chargers also, which help the developers in building up the charging stations with a minimum and most efficient manner as well. The other challenge remains with respect to the charging infrastructure. Here, since the investment involved in public charging station is slightly high, with having the lower utilization with respect to low density of electric vehicles on road. Presently, this is not a profitable investment per se for building up the public charging station, but we foresee like there's a large demand which is going to come up for these public charging stations once we achieve at least 30% electric vehicle sales by 2030 as predicted by the government. I'll just touch upon some of the how this ecosystem could be, at least like ecosystem could be developed in a more systematic manner. From the experience of operating this public charging station, we realized that there has to be a planned approach for building up these public EV charging station. So although the Ministry of Power Guidance defines a minimum of one public charging station a grid of 3 kilometer by 3 kilometer, is assessment has to be conducted by the charging station operator before deploying these public stations. So we also undertake a kind of assessment while building up these stations, where we try to see the locations are feasible for building up these charging stations. We try to target some of the most potential pockets in the city where this infra could be built up first. We try to segregate and prioritize the locations based on some of the key parameters with respect to feasibility, the footfall, the requirement, load availability, and other parameters of confined, more focused towards point of public interest, especially with respect to the public transport, the metro stations, the bus depots, bus terminals. So having this comprehensive approach, we try to implement the project. And also we undertake a kind of sustainability of the business operations, where we try to ensure like there's a collaboration with the multiple EV ecosystem operators, which includes the fleet operators, the OEMs, the EV charging station manufacturers and suppliers. So there is an sustainability with respect to operations could be achieved. Also, like with respect to the other source of revenue, one could look apart from the charging revenues. There is a possibility of looking for a non-charging tariff revenues, which could come from the advertisement and the branding opportunity these public charging stations brings on table to the investors. This about how the assessment could impact the end user tariff to an extent. If you look at this graph, this clearly indicates that once we have an improved utilization, so perhaps we can reduce the service charge to the end customers. If you look at the graph here, with the 20% utilization, perhaps there is a feasibility for reducing the service fee by 29%. If you look at the 50% utilization, so the energy operator can reduce the service fee by close to 47%. So this clearly shows that there has to be a plan and assessment has to be carried out while building up these public charging station. So at least the benefit could be passed to the end customer through reducing the service fee. I'll touch upon the business model, how we operate with on the public charging station. Here, typically you work with the land partners. So the land partners could be the distribution company, it could be development authority, it could be any private companies who owns the land parcels, which is more feasible for building up these EV charging stations. Here, typically the company invests in the entire infrastructure, which includes the procurement, installation, operation, maintenance of the charging stations. Here, the revenues are realized from the charging services. Here, the company takes up the entire responsibility of building up the upstream infrastructure required for this charging station. Here, typically we have a revenue sharing arrangement where the rentals are paid on energy basis, which is more like sharing of the revenue with the land partners. Typically, we agree certain percentage of revenue with the land partners, and we build up these public charging stations on a service model. The unique feature remains, since we work on an aggregation concept, we try to at least consolidate the requirement of EV chargers on a large scale. So we run the bulk procurement concept, so we can get that advantage of economies of scale. And also we closely work with some of the multilateral funding partners, so we have an access to low cost financing. So these key parameters help us in building the public charging stations with minimum cost. And also this cost is being offered to the end customers by reducing by keeping the affordable PCS services for the end customers. Snapshot about our portfolio. This is with respect to the DHI FAME 2 scheme. So ESL has an allocation of close to 1145 EV chargers from under the FAME 2 scheme. So in the state of West Bengal, we have an allocation of around 23 charging stations, where we plan to build up from 69 EV chargers in the city of Kolkata. This work has been commenced in the city of Kolkata now. So we plan to deploy these EV chargers by this year, June 2021. Some of the key outcomes of our EV charging business so far. So far, we have built up around close to 1,200 captive charging points. Apart from captive charging points, we also built up around 200 plus EV charging stations, which are purely public charging stations, which are capable of charging 375 vehicles simultaneously. So these major stations are being built up in Delhi, NCR, Kolkata, Chennai, and stations are upcoming in Ahmedabad and Nagpur in coming months. So we're also happy that we have supported close to 1.9 million of clean kilometers traveled. So we can see the consumption has touched close to 300,000 of units of consumption in last 1 year time. The below graph, I'll just take a minute to expand on the below graph how the utilization has improved over months for ESL. When we commenced this operation in May 2019, the utilization was less than 4.5% to 5%. So gradually we saw there is an improved utilization when we focused on our deployment strategies, which was with respect to identifying the right location and putting up the right combination of charges. And also we started doing tie-ups with the fleet operators who could bring utilization for these public charging stations. If you look at the real impact on the COVID-19 in the April and May month, here the utilization was less than 1%. Subsequently, the utilization has improved. Now we are touching close to 15% from these public charging stations. Some of the snapshot of a public charging station. The left one is the station which is a charging plaza where we have built up combination of charges at a location in Rafi Mark in Delhi. The right ones are the public charging stations which we have developed with the Kolkata Newtown Kolkata Development Authority, and these are the fast and the slow charging stations which are presently operational in Kolkata city. So just to maybe for the forum and to take up with the authorities. So we have a submission here that's in West Bengal. I think still there is no specified EV tariff. So I think the forum could take up for introducing a specific EV tariff for operation of public EV charging stations. So presently, the charging station are built on a commercial tariff. So once you have the commercial tariff, the end user tariff is going to increase. So the economics of operating the electric vehicle versus the IC vehicles could be affected. So I think the state could look at determining the EV tariff for the public charging stations, and also a consideration could be made for exempting the fixed demand charges. So presently, since there is no specified EV tariff in the state, so the commercial rates are applicable and also the fixed charges are applicable for the existing public charging station, which makes the public charging station business unviable at this point in time. And also, I think we need to look have a comprehensive approach where we can build the charging infrastructure for all segment of electric vehicles. It should not be confined to 2 or 3 or 4 wheelers. I think there has to be a holistic approach where a focus could be made towards building up charging infrastructure for all segment of electric vehicle. So I think with those thoughts in mind, I think let me pause here. I would be happy if any questions are there from the audience. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Mohan. I will now request Mr. Appan, Associate RE Mobility, World Business Council for Sustainable Development, to give his presentation.
Thanks, Suchishmita, for the kind introduction, and good evening, everyone. I'm extremely honored to be given this opportunity to share the stage with such eminent speakers. And thanks to the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry and British Deputy High Commission for giving me this opportunity. So I represent the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, which is a CEO-led global organization of 200 plus businesses who are working together to accelerate the transition to a sustainable world. And I'm being asked, considering the sphere of companies that we represent, I'm being asked to speak more on the role of businesses in conceptualizing an India EV ambition. And I feel that, and I would like to refer to one of the presentations made earlier by Divya, wherein she spoke about business ambitions. So that can be used as a good segue to talk about a national EV ambition. And during my presentation, I would consciously refrain from mentioning about infrastructure and green jobs, which are also the other parts of the agenda as well. And I acknowledge that those two elements would also play a really critical role in the uptake of EVs in India. Before that, let me just try to give you a quick introduction about what we do. So these are the group of 200 companies which our company represents. And a WBCSD works across different programs and projects, which includes mobility decarbonization. And mobility decarbonization, again, has an India deep dive related coalition, which is called as Remobility, wherein we are engaging with 50 plus companies from the EV ecosystem in India, with a common objective of accelerating business or fleet-led adoption of EVs in India. So these companies come together and collaborate on developing knowledge products and advocating right policies to help accelerate EV adoption in India. And there are certain deliverables which we are working on, which you can see on the screen. One of them was the launch of an India Business Guide to EV adoption at COP25 in Madrid in 2019, which was launched alongside Mr. Anirban, who's also on the call today, as well as secretaries from the government of India. So the final deliverable, which we, as you can see on the screen, is an activity which we are working on, which is relevant to a national ambition, which is to put together a national ambition statement, which is CEO backed, and which can be used by the government of India to support their and enhance their transport related NDCs at COP26 later this year. So India does not have an EV ambition, 100% ZEV EV ambition in place that's globally announced at a global platform. And the previous announcements or the statements made by ministries or by certain stakeholders were largely uncoordinated and were subjected to revisions later on. So there's definitely a need and a window for collaboration between both these two stakeholders, that is A, the businesses, and B, the government ministries, to formulate an ambition in terms of why do we need an ambition at the first place. So businesses do look to governments to provide clear and consistent timelines that helps businesses to develop clarity and confidence for the steps that they will put forward. And while all the policy interventions and policy announcements which have been made by the Indian government in the recent past, whether it be in form of FAME 2 and the incentives announced under state-led policies, are reflective that there is consensus that's shaping up within the Indian government and towards encouraging electrification of mobility. The absence of ambitions and mandates creates some sort of an ambiguity about the rate at which the government is envisioning this EV transition to happen. So this is how this chart represents the timeline of global EV ambitions. And there are so far 17 countries who've announced 100% ZEV targets. The ones in green have EV sales or stocks target, as well as the ones in red have ICE phase out targets. And the two key geographies who've been in the news related to their EV ambitions and actions were Norway and UK. So Norway has become the first country to sell more electric cars than ICE cars. And their leadership on EV adoption is critical because A, they have opted for a very ambitious timeline of 2025. And B, their actions are congruent to their intentions and ambitions. Again, I think in the earlier part of this session, Nick spoke at length about the UK commitments, wherein they've brought forth their ambition of introducing a ban to ICE and petrol diesel vehicles from 2035 to 2030. Which showcases that the governments across geographies stand ready to work with businesses to bring about this transition of EVs. So in order to gauge the viewpoint of our coalition member companies on the need and form of an India EV ambition, we hosted a workshop with some of these companies in August last year. And then some of the reflections from those workshops were most of the companies felt the need for an India EV ambition, which could act as a demand signal and can alleviate industry uncertainties, and can also encourage them in making more investments in the sector itself. In terms of the form and the nature of the ambition, so they suggested that it should be quantified and should be linked to India's climate commitments and the NDCs. And an ideal ambition could take the shape of a combination of EV sales target along with an ICE phase out timeline, which is what this chart represents. Again, through most of 2021, and I mentioned it earlier as well, WBCSD will be working with some of these anchor companies to draft out an ambition statement that can support Indian government's announcement at COP26 regarding raising their mobility related ambitions. And we'll work with these companies throughout this year, wherein these companies co-author the ambition statement, and then B, back it up with their CEO signatures that can then be taken up with the government. So at the end, I'd just like to say that switching from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles is going to be one of the biggest transition that our generation will witness. And it is highly unlikely that only an ambition announcement or a single stakeholder, whether it be businesses or the government or a single business model, will bring about this change. It will be an extensive collaboration between businesses and the government on actions as well as ambitions to create an impact at the rate that's needed. So with that, I'd like to conclude. If there are any reflections on my presentation, I'd be happy to take questions on that. And again, at the end, I'd like to thank Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Deputy High Commission for giving me this opportunity. And I look forward to the next presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Appan. I will now request Mr. Alekhya Datta, Area Convener, Electricity and Fuels Group, TERI, to present his presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Suchimita. Am I audible and the slides are visible for you?
Yeah, the slides are visible and you're audible.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Bengal the Bengal Chamber and British Deputy High Commission, Kolkata, for giving us this opportunity to speak on this topical forum. And of course, I have only one slide, and I'll be very straight to the topic given here: infrastructure creation and the business strategies. So of course, taking the lead from some of the numbers, of course, I borrowed. Just a minute, I just yeah. So some of the numbers I borrowed from a recent CW report. Of course, you can see the host of infrastructure of the investment that is there in India if we are transitioning towards electric mobility, irrespective of the targets that we have, and of course we also believe transition to the clean sources of electricity as well as on the transport is one of the major drivers towards this the transition in the sector. So having said that, and we all convinced by ourselves that, of course, why electric mobility is not being, very, we are not able to accelerate this electric mobility in the country. It's all about the infrastructural issues. And I just try to put down certain points. Of course, it can be discussed within the industries, within the ministries, as a kind of a suggestion to the government. One thing we could realize, when we're talking about the infrastructure, of course, whatever the corporates or any other businesses, investing into this system, until and unless the people or the agencies that are there in the field, like distribution utilities, they have to be allowed with investment into public charging infrastructure. at least we create an adequate infrastructure, and then of course we can see like the market is moving by its own. And also we did little bit analysis on some of the utilities. If we allow kind of a scale of 500 to 100,000 number of public charging stations, kind of impact that we have on the tariff, it will be very, very minimal. It is sometimes it's coming less than 1 paisa. So I think allow distribution utility to invest into this infrastructure. That is one of the key recommendation from our side in order to move towards this public infrastructure. And also the number 2 is also Government of India, DHI has rightly taken this initiative already, electrification of the highways and the expressway corridors, because we all know the intercity buses, the long distance routes are more economical if you talk about electric mobility or the TCO parity in place. So electrification of highway corridors and expressway is very much required. So, and it also creates a lot of opportunities for different businesses, as well as create more jobs. We can also rope in the remote areas in the highway corridors while we are talking about the electrification, and it will be more easier, in terms of the impact on the distribution system, the local level of congestions. And as I told, the intercity routes is anyways economical for electric mobility point of view. Number 3, of course, one of the suggestions that we'd like to put forward to all of you, to the industry as well as to the government, can we think about certain amount of expenditure under the CSR, and the corporates are allowed to spend the CSR expenditure at some percentage. We are not talking about 100%, some percentage towards the development of the EV infrastructure. Of course, until this market is created and or the kind of the adequacy is there on the infrastructure point. So this kind of mechanism can be also adopted, and I think if you also club like what we did in the solar or in wind plants, like the accelerated depreciation or the tax exemption for the corporates, if it can be merged also with this. So these are the kind of 4 pointers we'd like to try to present it over all of you. I think we can further discuss in detail like how this can be taken forward different ministries or by different industries. So yeah, so that is it, Suchimita, from my side, without taking further time for the next session. Yeah, Suchimita, this is it from my side.
Okay, thank you, Alakya. Thank you all the distinguished speakers in this session. We will now go to the next session, which is on green job creations. Before that, we would request everybody to wait with us for 4 or 5 minutes, because we need to relive in the social media. Okay, we are now back in reliving the session in our social media platforms. So welcome to the session and the last session on green jobs creation. I will invite Mr. Arun Kumar Mukherjee. He's the mentor of our Energy and Environment Committee to take up the session. Mr. Mukherjee, please.
Yeah. Hello. Good evening, everybody. Our distinguished speakers. And can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hello.
We can. Yes, sir. We are audible. You are audible.
Oh, okay. Our distinguished speakers and the delegates who are participating online. In this session, we are going to explore the possibilities of green job creation in the EV ecosystems. After going through the various sessions, now we are fairly clear that embracing the EV system is inevitable, and more so because Niti Aayog understands that India can save 64% of anticipated passenger road-based and mobility-related energy demand and 37% of carbon emission by 2030 if electric mobility is pursued. The need for affordable, efficient green mobility is a necessity for our sustainable, inclusive, socio-economic growth. The development of a sustainable mobility ecosystem requires a collaborative, cooperative, and operating in a commonly understanding platform in a synergistic manner amongst all the multi-stakeholders so that it can smoothly get introduced and it can expand, meeting our requirement. As a primary stakeholder, central and state government, as well as nodal agencies, must identify the policy and regulatory barriers to facilitate private investment. Subsequently, the stakeholders must identify ways to promote the transition of the existing mobility value chain in adopting newer technologies, preserving and creating jobs, and maintaining the economic contribution. Livelihood and green job creation will happen in the entire mobility value chain with its huge opportunity for growth with the adoption of electric vehicle ecosystem. The electric vehicle ecosystem comprises of the OEM, basically the manufacturers of vehicles, the battery manufacturing facility, the ancillaries to support both these manufacturers, charging system, delivery value chain, financial players, mobility solution players, and the huge electronic industry which are required for the manufacturing of electrical vehicles. The huge opportunity in employment in these areas will be successful only when we understand what are the barriers as of today all these stakeholders are facing in their journey. We have three very distinguished speakers in the from the ecosystem, Mr. Vishwanath Tiwari from the OEM equipment manufacturing, Mr. Vikas Mishra, who is a service provider of the mobility system, and Ms. Dolon Ganguly, Program Director, Azad Foundation. It's an NGO who are working for the creation of jobs for the poor women. What we are going to do, we shall listen from each one of them in their area of operation and their experiences, and then we shall go into the interactive session. May I request now Mr. Vishwanath Tiwari to please share your experiences with your journey. Mr. Tiwari.
Good evening, Mr. Mukherjee, and good evening, everybody present here. My name is Vishwanath, and I'm representing Excite Industries today. Just a check. Am I audible, Mr. Mukherjee?
Yes, you are.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So as I said, I'm representing Excite Industries today. And we are here to talk about a very, very interesting story, I must say. A very interesting success story of very, very ordinary people who have come together and have really created history in, as far as my understanding goes. And I think you will also believe in the same during the end of our talk. So I'm going to tell you this entire story in that literal story form only. So it started in the year 2010 when a big sporting event was happening in India called Commonwealth Games. And it gave a few very, very new kind of sporting stars in India in the field of wrestling, in the field of archery, in the field of shooting. It also gave a product called e-rickshaw. For the first time, few e-rickshaws were imported for the Commonwealth Games for a specific place to, commute people from one place to other. And from there, it all started. Then 3 years later, in the year 2013, a few enterprising businessmen in India, they went to China and started importing these products. And from there, it all took on its own. There was a great demand in the market, and it started filling it up. In the year 2014, being one of the most trusted energy storage brand, we decided that this vehicle needs a different kind of battery. Earlier, the normal batteries were used, which were used for the inverter or the other products. It was used in this vehicle as well. With the help of our established R&D facilities, we developed a new product of e-rickshaw, and we started, putting those batteries in the e-rickshaw business. That was our first encounter with the e-rickshaw as a brand. So for us, it was a natural succession that now we have launched our own e-vehicle of the e-rickshaw called Excite Neo. We launched this product in 2018-19, and now we are into this business. And not only because of our natural succession from the battery, we also thought that the unorganized sector is mostly working in this, and the quality of the vehicle, the safety parameters are not being kept taken care of. So that was another reason why we went into this. And I can say that apart from an air conditioner and the airbags, all the features which are there in a car today, you can find in our vehicle. So that was another reason to give a comfort and, listening to the driver and the passenger. That is why we get into this business. Okay. So now coming back to how it created the jobs in India. You'll agree with me that last 10 to 15 years have been very, very remarkable year as far as the infrastructure related to transportation or the public transport is concerned. The kind of development which we have done as a country has been remarkable. Be it introduction of CNG buses, now we are talking and we are seeing electric buses as well, or the network of the metros and across the cities and in different cities all across the country. So these products have played a very, very vital role in the last mile connectivity. When the infrastructure or public transport infrastructure improved, these e-rickshaws have played very, very vital role in connecting people to the last mile. And that is where this growth has started coming in. It has provided direct and indirect both kind of employment. If I give you the number which is the least, which is a published number and talks about the least number of e-rickshaw applying in the on the roads as of now, it is providing an employment not less than 6.5 lakh people are employed in this industry. And the biggest employer in the country, Indian Railways, employs around 1.3 million people. So without any fanfare, without any much of the talks, without any structured support, just because there was a need and there was a fulfillment, in less than 10 years of time, this industry has given employment of close to 6.5 crores. Just to give you 6.5 lakhs, I'm sorry. Just to give you in perspective, this is as half of the employment which is provided by the largest employment provider, which is Indian Railways. Just to give you another perspective to it, if everything goes well and the way we are expecting this industry to grow, in next 4 to 5 years of time, this will provide employment, direct and indirect, in India, not less than 1.4 million, which will be higher than existing #1 employer in the country. And it is not that it is providing only this kind of huge number of employment. Let's talk a bit about the quality of employment it is providing. For me, the most important factor, the kind of employment this is providing, is it is providing the employment for the people right at his doorstep. I'm not saying that migrants are not here. If you go to Delhi and see the drivers who are driving e-rickshaw or at the metros, they are, yes, of course, they are migrants. There few people have come from the eastern part of the country. But major market, which is West Bengal and East, if you see, most of the guys, they stay in their village, they come out in the morning, they go to the nearby station or any bus stop or wherever the business is there, and they run their e-rickshaw throughout the day and go back to their own village in the evening. They stay with their families. Apart from this, they also participate in different activities, farming activities as well. That is why during the major crop seasons, we find a major decline in the number of e-rickshaws on the roads, because people go back to their farming, they do that work, and then after a week or two, they come back to the to the business once again. So that, for me as an individual, as an executive, that is very satisfying as well, because the kind of employment this is providing is they are not asking people to migrate from their places. In terms of remuneration, let me give you a perspective. At a normal place, any e-rickshaw driver is not getting less than 800 to 900 rupees per day. If he is in a high business volume area, like near any bus stop or railway station or any tourist place, if he is working there, like in the places called Agra, Jaipur, these major tourist spots, he is earning close to 1200 to 1400 rupees also. And for that kind of that kind of employment, it's a fairly good amount of money, because we have classified these people as well. So there are three kind of major. There are few people who are 12th pass as well. There are few who get into the college as well. Mostly they are dropouts. And there is third category of people who have upgraded from a rickshaw puller, who have been rickshaw puller earlier, though the number is very less, but yes, they have upgraded themselves and they have become. So though they are also there. So this kind of money, around ranging from 800 to 1400 rupees a day, is a comfortable kind of amount which they are getting. And they are getting at their own convenience. The cost of running a e-rickshaw on a day, so cost of owning a battery on a daily basis and cost of charging a battery is not more than 140 rupees. So, and that's the only major cost. So 30% of owning a e-rickshaw is battery when you take for the first time. And the only variable cost is the battery. There is no other major variable cost, unlike other vehicles. There is no maintenance, nothing. You have to charge a battery and you have to replace the battery every 9-10 months. So on a daily basis, it's cost him only 140, 150 rupees, including 20 rupees of the charging of 8 hours. So it gives him a very, very comfortable amount of disposable income, around ranging about from 700 to 1200 rupees a day. I tell you one very important, aspect of this. If I give that fellow a financing option for 18 months for financing the whole vehicle, it will not cost him more than 150 rupees a day. So even if he has no money, he has to go for the finance. He has to pay only 150 rupees a day, 150 rupees for the, his maintenance cost per day basis for the battery, 300 rupees a day, and he can earn 1000 rupees a day very, very easily. And I have already told what is the demographics and of the person I'm talking about. So it's a complete green and qualitative employment which this sector has provided. And I'm very proud to say that it has been created by the people themselves without major fanfares, without much of the talks. And believe you me, when we talk about e-mobility and when we started discussing this some time back, we were not talking about e-rickshaws. We were only talking about the Teslas of the world.
Yeah.
And I'm not very sure when Tesla will be able to, or anybody of that sort will be able to match the employment of 6.5 crore which this industry is providing at this point of time. Having said that, I have told where it came from, where we are going, and what is the kind of scope this industry has. And I also touched upon this major challenge. I want to emphasize further on this. Though I said that there is a disposable income everybody is having of 800 to 900 rupees on a daily basis, and his finance cost is only 150 rupees. In spite of having that kind of a strong value proposition, none of the major banks are providing finance facilities, just because of the demographics of these people. Because the nationalized bank have certain norms, and if you don't fit into that norms, as I said, that few guys have upgraded from rickshaw puller, few are college dropouts or school dropouts or whatever. So they are not getting that easy finance. And for few people, arranging 90,000 or 1 lakh rupees at one go, it might be a challenge. And that is why they are getting into the hands of those local financiers, or they are on their disposal, and they get harassed. So I think this is the biggest bottleneck at this point of time. If the banks come forward, they start lending money generously. These are nice people. They know their respect in the society. They will definitely get the money, return the money back. And I have just told you that they have the disposable income to return that money. They are earning 700 to 800 rupees at a normal place, at a good place around 1,200 rupees, and they have to shed only 150 rupees out of that on a daily basis. So it's a completely still deal for a
situation.
Yeah, only 15% of his daily income, has to go into his EMIs, and if this can be done, this industry can see even brighter days. And now with new organized players coming in, the safety and other parameters are also being taken care of. I'm not getting into the other challenges which are there. They will be sorted out, because these are all, I think, we are part of the learning curve, so it is because of that. But this is the major bottleneck I see in terms of finance. If this can be sorted, it will be a big business for the banks as well, and they have to see this from a business angle, which I'm just trying to explain, in terms of disposable income and how much out of that has to go as a EMI. This EMI is not a burden for that fellow, I'm telling you. It's not a burden at all.
Actually, Mr. Tiwari, interesting point is, even today, the total number of vehicles sold in India, out of that, 86% are two-wheeler and three-wheelers.
Yeah.
So that is the proportion of the vehicles which are coming into the market. And I consider that is the opportunity for conversion, transition to e-rickshaw. One. In many semi-urban, rural, or fully urban area, rickshaws and e-rickshaws also operate on two-shift basis. It may be getting operated by the family members. Somebody starts at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, stops at 2 o'clock, and then somebody takes over 2 o'clock and then goes back at 10 o'clock. So when you consider the employment part of it, you know, and the earning part of it, we are required to also look at it, what is the physical, social engagement of a human being, which is qualitatively taking place through e-rickshaw. Because if these people, otherwise if not getting engaged, will not have any qualitative socio growth in their life.
Agree. So there are multiple facets to it. In 10 minutes, we could have discussed the most important parts of it, and you rightly touched upon. That is a very, very important, thing. Suppose if these people who are coming from this demography, if they were not having employment, what else they would have been doing? So
absolutely,
that is what you're talking about. Yes. So there are multiple. So thank you so very much for having me and I thank all of you for inviting me, and that's all I had to say. Have a nice evening.
I would request you to be with us, because as we proceed with the other speakers, we shall find out the common area where we can have interaction.
For sure.
Yeah. So far, I would only like to ask you, so far as the battery cost is concerned, or the total cost of ownership is concerned, how do you see this is comfortable to the consumer? Means if somebody is buying a e-rickshaw today, how comfortable he is when it comes to total cost of ownership?
So I'll give you a very interesting perspective. So this will, this will help you understand it better. So auto rickshaw, the traditional auto rickshaw, which runs on fuel, it takes 3 people as a passenger and 1 as a driver. Authorized. Unauthorized, I'm not talking about. For an e-rickshaw, it takes 1 driver and 4 passenger. Cost of an e-rickshaw, the cost of ownership at a showroom is 40% of the auto. And the running cost is almost negligible, as I told you, 130 rupees a day. So that is it's all about. You can own an e-rickshaw if you have around 1,25,000 rupees or 1,50,000 rupees. That's it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, when this is the opportunity, I consider the other way. And when we consider how much of the oil import cost we are going to save by adaptation to the e-rickshaw, why the sufficient incentive, tax benefit, and grants will not be made available so that it can really get into the road on a mass movement basis? Your comment.
Of course. So that's a bigger question, actually, to answer. And considering the scope of this talk, I did not touch upon that point. But that's a big opportunity. I can only say that. What I just explained you is the rickshaw which has been imported and has created this kind of employment. Suppose if we were producing those kind of rickshaws here in India and maybe exporting it outside as well. So that's another sea of opportunity which is waiting to be explored. So that production part of opportunity exploration we did not discuss. I thought that is not the scope of the discussion. That is why we did not touch upon. But that another ocean of opportunity which we have just touched upon. It's a huge, huge opportunity. It's a huge, huge opportunity.
Because that also will create a lot of green jobs.
Of course.
In the industry.
Of course. Yes.
In the
And
industry.
And we have, we don't have infrastructure at this point of time, but I think we have adequate skill set available in India, which can be, we can explore that, because it is not a complicated manufacturing. We just need to have few, a few components and
Fabrication.
parts and assemble that together. It's not a complicated thing. That's the beauty of e-vehicle. So it is not complicated at all. You just need to have a structure and have a power storage device to run it. But where we are lacking at this point of time is the economies of scale. So it will be difficult to match the prices which are prevailing in import markets. So that is where, yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. So be with us.
Sure.
Now, may I request Ms. Dolon Ganguly, Program Director, Azad Foundation.
Thank you, Mr. Mukherjee.
Hello, Dolon.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. Am I audible? Yeah.
Yeah, you are audible. You have been listening to the whole session possibly.
Almost.
And now,
I mean, I missed the first bit little bit, but almost. Yeah. And
okay.
it was so enriching for me. Well, good evening to all distinguished speakers here who are present and Mr. Mukherjee. So yeah, it has been enriching for, I have a presentation, but before I go to presentation, I have a few points to make. So I was just listening how whole world and the India and our state at policy level from various walks of the policy making, people are talking and thinking, which was, I mean, really, it's an eye opener for me, because we are the organization. I think within first 2-3 organizations, we are among them one who are really fighting on ground to train women in e-bikes and engage them in e-commerce industry. So here I will come on that. And so I have a small presentation. Which is, can I share my PPT?
Yes, you can.
Yeah. Thank you. So just to start with, Azad Foundation is, we are the organization, as Mr. Mukherjee said, that we are NGO, and we work in, right now we work in 8 cities in India, in 4 cities directly, and in other 4 cities with partners. In Delhi, Jaipur, Kolkata, and Chennai, we work directly, and Ahmedabad, Lucknow, Bhubaneswar, and Indore, we work with our partners, like-minded other organizations. So, and our work area focuses on bringing women in non-traditional livelihood. The livelihoods which really were traditionally closed for women. And our model is actually, Azad Foundation is the organization, the trust, the NGO, who provides training to urban resource poor women, whereas our strategic partner, Sakha Consulting Wing, provide the job or place these trained women in the market. So it's not, we are not that kind of training institute, just complete training and leave them. So the thing is, our objective is to enable them to engage in the market and break this gender binary of the market. So while we are talking about job creation, I think let us just see in a few minutes that what is the context of our country right now in terms of the women's participation in workforce. We all know, just a minute, okay, sorry. Yeah, so we all know that participation of women's in workforce is declining, and it is really, really a big concern for the country now. And according to the latest World Bank data, it was 1990, it was 30% the women's participation in workforce, and now in 19 it is 20.5, and if we go by the SDG report of 2019, it is actually 18.5%. And and the interesting is at this point of time, these statistics is the time, is from that time when our GDP is really growing. I mean, what a dichotomy. And the proportion of women in working age have reached to 25%. So that's how the labor market is working now. And we know that the informal sector, 93% are women. So in this situation, when we talk about job creation, then we have to think about how we place and how we see women's participation there. After pandemic, we know that things have been worsened. So 61% of women who were working in the either in the domestic workers, or in the service sector, or even the arts and other kind of work, the 61% have been impacted. And latest ILO data says that it is, as I mean, you all know that it is 118 million workers in India who are casually employed will be affected, and within that, a huge section are these casual workers. Within the casual workers, a huge section are women. So, and while we think of the job creation, then before the job creation, of course, the skill training, the situation of skill training is also something we need to think of when we talk about job creation. So 2.74%, we see the working age population formally trained in technical and vocational training. And 90% of youth between 15 to 30 years age who are unemployed have had no vocational training, and 7.2% youth had vocational training not resulted in employment. 42% of youth are not in employment, education or training segment, and 96.2% of this segment comprises women, unfortunately. And you see this, in these days the digital divide is again increasing, and the data is here. So in our experience, what we see, if we really want to engage women in employment, we need to create, I mean, it is must to create an enabling ecosystem. When we say enabling ecosystem, what does it mean? It means that gendered social norms like mobility restriction needs to be decreased, and like participation of care work, men's participation in care work needs to be increased. Creches should be there. Equal pay needs to be there. I mean, these are all we discussed many years, but it is unfortunately it's not there till now. That much, I mean, not there in a sense. The requirement is not fulfilled yet. So digital divide is increasing, and there is, in terms of skill, the skill sets what we provide to women that often doesn't match with the industry's need. And the skill building, when we talk about skill building of women, so I mean, we are in a driving, I just missed to say that Azad Foundation provide driving training to women, and Sakha, our partner organization, create job as a women chauffeurs, cab drivers for them. Okay, so for the driving, when the first women came for the training, we thought that just let us provide the technical driving training and leave her for job. But the first day she did a big accident, because it's not that she was not skilled. She was skilled enough, technically skilled enough, but her mindset and the age old, for the generations, she has heard that this job is not for you. You are good at home. Roaming around at roads is not your cup of tea. So this mindset, changing this mindset of the particular woman and the society as a whole, as a big job. And that is why when we say skill building, we talk about skill plus plus. Actually, we provide driving skill along with other skills, like we provide them self-defense, we provide them spoken English, with first aid, gender, violence against women, all those. There's a holistic 9 modules we provide them, so that they when they enter in our center and when they goes out, they are two different women. And so I recommend wherever the skill building things, I mean, we plan, we should, for women at least, we need to think about their socio-economic situation, and we plan along with technical training all other right-based and life skills training. So Azad Foundation, I have already spoken, so I'm not repeating. The approach what we follow is that we call it is gender just skill education. So what I already discussed, so I'm not repeating. So very recently, after pandemic, before I go to the next slide, after pandemic, we were, as I said, that we are training women in driving four-wheelers, and almost, in the previous slide I missed it. So almost 2500 women have been trained all over the India by Azad Foundation, and within that we can say, I mean, it's a humble number actually, it's even more than this. More than 1,000 women are on road working as a driver. So
Great.
Within that, I mean, as an NGO, we have been able to do this, and we have a network where other NGOs are working for other non-traditional trades, not driving particularly. But having said that, after pandemic, when we all know the driving market, especially the private placement, even our women used to work in the hotels, hospitals, those markets were being closed for them. They were being removed from jobs, and some of them have taxis. Even the taxis market is also very bad. In Kolkata, all the Gotidhara women, all the women who have got cabs in Gotidhara scheme are trained by us. So and even Delhi, the first woman driver is trained by us. So all this, but all this women's income was really going less. Then we thought that what could be done, and then we with this new opportunity opened us to engage them in e-commerce, in terms of train them two-wheelers and engage them in all those delivery businesses, as delivery executives. At this point of time, Flipkart approached us, and we engaged in Kolkata, in Delhi, women in Flipkart and Big Basket. But as I heard from the climate group, that Flipkart is their partner, maybe they're for that, as Flipkart offered them e-scooters. So that's not a problem for them. But for the other agencies like Big Basket, Amazon and all, they are not offering the vehicle. So then we, other organization, we have to organize vehicles for them. Now we are really, I mean, we are stuck there. So I'll come to the challenge, and that's my last slide. So, but this is that why we are in green mobility, because we really aspire to make our planet sustainable. We are committed to SDG goals like 13, and also training women to e-vehicles. Our strategy has been include them to in e-commerce, as I said. So the challenges, so here we are really stuck. I mean, I will tell you the real story of Kolkata, where I am leading the program. So for last 1 month, I'm just running in the doors of the banks and financial institutions. No one is ready to provide loan for e-scooty. All the banks, all the financial institutions, NBFCs are saying that unless these vehicles are registered under motor vehicles, they are not going to get any loans. Under this situation, and these are resource poor women, you understand, they can't have that much money, what very rightly my previous speaker was saying, and that's the bottleneck. And even today I got information just before this thing that another financial institution whom we approached has rejected the loans. And interestingly, we offered this, okay, you don't need to give them give loan to Sakha. Sakha is a company, whereas Azad is a trust. I understand trust can't get loan, but Sakha is a company, provide loan to them, and we do have a very stable, all those papers and everything, but that has been rejected for this purpose. So we are really bottlenecked, where Big Basket is asking for women from us, and we have 40-50 women in pool who should be placed by March and who need job, but we are not getting finance. Second, we discussed in everywhere, so I'm not going into that the charging station. Yes, in Kolkata, we do have charging station, and I appreciate that West Bengal government is really working hard on that. But the charging stations are for the buses, but not for these small vehicle, two-wheelers and all. So these two things, and there are many more. There's very less vendors in the city, because we are the ground people. We don't know people where to go, and we want to do this. So I just want to know from where we can get money to really, just not any, I'm not asking for any favor, just loan in this women's name or even our organization's name. We will organize with them how they will repay loan and all this, because we are sure they will be able to earn, as Mr. Misha also, Mr. Tiwari also said. And also the women who are already employed in Flipkart and Big Basket earning are huge, a decent amount of money. So it's not at all a problem for them to repay. But when the policymakers are thinking like that, then financial institutions have to have the more, I would say, dynamic policies in this. I am just last slide to recommendations.
No, please.
Yeah, recommendations is just, I'm in the last slide actually, the comprehensive policy intervention required. It's just not the bits and pieces, and the infrastructural support, as all of you discussed, and I'm also recommending that. Industry, government, and financial institution need to work in synergy. Awareness generation is very important, because common people, another speaker also spoke about this, that common people don't know about this. So we need to really put effort to create the awareness. And yeah, we appreciate in this government effort on this. And here are some pictures. You see here is this women with having e-bike, and these three are in Big Basket, and these are our program that cab drivers. With this, I'd like to conclude my presentation. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you very much, Dolan. I just want to ask you why you have not ventured into e-rickshaw.
Well, yeah, Mr. Mukherjee, we can. We are not close to that. We can, but we are also looking for the job market. So these companies after pandemic approached us, and we just wanted to do that first. But e-rickshaw, we are open, and we are also looking for that options. And one of our partners in Lucknow are working on e-rickshaws. They have started working there. So we will be, of course, opting for e-rickshaws also very soon. We are,
because by that possibly you can create some self-reliant job, from the family. The people can come out and run it, and it is not very costly also to manage. So it can create job opportunity for them. I just thought I shall mention it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ganguly, for elaborating this. Mr. Mukherjee, if you could allow, can I
please
say something?
Please.
I don't know why, but just came to my mind. All these companies have their CSR budgets as well. So if really Flipkarts and Amazon of the world, they want to, finance in such way so that it comes into the CSR activity as well, I don't know if that can be done. I don't. So maybe when you talked about your trust and all, that can be a route rather than going to the financial institutions for the women, if that can be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Dolan, please be there with us. Now, may I request Mr. Bikas Misra? Mr. Bikas Misra, founder and CEO, Moving, the entrepreneur, a startup. We would like to hear your interesting story and experiences.
Sure, sir. First of all, I would like to thank Bengal Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to this exciting session. I've been listening to a few speakers over the last few hours, and it is very, very insightful. So thank you so much for having this session, much needed at this time of the hour. At Moving, our vision is that we want to deliver clean logistics in a cost-effective and efficient way. And the way I see it is, in India, as you rightly said, 86% of the vehicle that's being sold in India is two-wheeler and three-wheeler. So if we have to electrify India, we have to electrify where there is biggest impact potential, number one. Number two, where it is more feasible to do the electrification. On both the counts, where the impact is high and the feasibility is also high, I think two-wheeler and three-wheeler fits the bill very rightly. And that's where we came up with this concept of moving, that we want to use two-wheeler and three-wheeler in electrifying the last mile delivery. And we have been in discussion with Amazon, Flipkart, BigBasket, and they are very excited to be part of it. And I totally echo the sentiment of what Mr. Tiwari was saying and Ms. Ganguly was saying, that financing is a challenge. Getting the right bikers is a challenge. And we'd be happy to work with Ms. Ganguly, with Azad Foundation, because we are shortly going to start service in Delhi. We are shortly going to start our operations in Pune and also in Bangalore. And we are looking for bikers who don't have to purchase the vehicle. The vehicle will be purchased by the moving company, and we will ask the rider to do the job of delivering the last mile purpose. And as per the norms of the market, we would be very happy to onboard female drivers as well, and that it will be great inclusive story for us. And also, I truly believe in the empowering the women through this last mile delivery, because I feel that if e-commerce has to grow in India, if the true benefit of digitization has to come to India, you have to be more inclusive, and there's no other way you can reach the bottom of the pyramid without affecting this people. So I'm very happy to get introduced to Ms. Ganguly, and would be happy to share contact details and take it forward. So that's on that particular part.
Thanks,
But the way
Thanks.
the way I see, sir, the whole electric vehicle ecosystem has four big components to it. One is the vehicle, second is the charging, third is the driver, and fourth is the technology piece. Now, how this whole job system will evolve, and the way I at least see it, vehicle in terms of 20 million vehicle is being sold in India, two-wheeler every year. In next 5 years, now you can always debate whether it's 2025 or 2028 or 2030. But in this decade, for sure, I am firm believer that we can achieve the target of 100% electrification of the new sales in this decade itself. If that happens, which means 20 million of the product has to be manufactured, 20 million battery has to be manufactured, and the entire ancillary unit has to be set up to develop this whole battery management system for that as well. So I see a huge growth opportunity from a job perspective in the vehicle product segment. Second, it comes to charging infra. If you look at, sir, the number of petrol pumps that you have in India, it's 70,000. 70,000 petrol pump is sufficient to meet the demand of 1.3 billion people. But when it comes to the charging stations, the number of charging stations required will be like multiples of 100 of what you have currently in terms of petrol stations. Just to give you examples, sir, in China, the number of public charging stations now is almost like 0.5 million, with only that less penetration. Just imagine the size of India. I feel that there'll be millions of charging stations required, and a new business model has to be evolved. Like Mr. Tiwari said, that e-rickshaw has already penetrated in India, and already there are 1.5 million e-rickshaws there. But they've also created a new informal charging network, and the parking and charging facility is available for those kind of e-rickshaws. I think the way people used to charge their mobile first, now they are charging their e-rickshaw there. And I see that huge number of jobs can be created by having this millions of charging and parking facility for this e-rickshaw kind of thing. So that's number two I see from a charging perspective in terms of the stations that are going to be built, and that's number two. The third part, the driver, of course, uh, it requires a different mindset to drive electric vehicle. It requires a different skill set to drive the electric vehicle. I feel if you have to have millions of electric vehicles on the road, those millions of electric vehicle riders also has to be trained. So you will need to set up multiple training centers, multiple facilities where these people are being trained in terms of how to run an electric vehicle, and that is very important to get the right benefit out of it. And what we have seen that a same driver can get a range of 60 kilometers, another driver will get a range of 80 kilometers, and the other driver gets a range of around 90 kilometers. The driving behavior determines what is the juice that you can extract out of an electric vehicle, and that's why having the right upskill of the driver is very important to get the benefit of electric vehicle. So that's on the driver part. The fourth part which I talked about was technology, and technology has two components to it. One is the hardware component to it, and the other one is the software component to it. The hardware component is that we need to take lot many data from electric vehicle. So battery throws lot many data. We need to check the health of the battery. We need to check the health of the vehicle. We need to check the looks of the vehicle. So whole telematics that has to be built and has to be fitted in the vehicle, either as a part of the OEM or externally, because those data has to be monitored. I think that hardware industry of telematics and electronics is going to be a big industry in India. On the software side, for people like us, for a company like us, we need to have the right fleet management technology. We need to know what is the state of the charge of the battery. We need to know where the location is. We need to know how do we serve the next 2 trips. If the normal vehicle is doing 2 trips, can we do 3 trips? For that, we need a lot of data to go through, and a lot of software has to be built on the top of the charging infra, on the top of the vehicle, on the top battery, and that will require a lot of IT professionals to create that kind of software solutions for us. So the way I see it, from a vehicle perspective, there's a huge millions of vehicles need to go on the road. From a charging infra perspective, there are millions of charging infra has to be created. From a drivers, they need to be upskilled, and the technology, both hardware and software, has to be added. So the whole ecosystem by this way will create a lot of jobs, and I'm very confident that in this decade we will see 100% electrification of two-wheeler and three-wheeler. And as a moving company, I am totally committed to reduce the tailpipe emissions to zero in the last mile delivery. So I'm very optimistic, sir.
Thank you very, very much. In fact, because I think after listening to you, all of us will be very, very optimistic. We see huge opportunity of green job creation in the various segment of the whole ecosystem. And with the continuous increase of population, 1.23 and then 1.5 billion, what is targeted, with that, the requirement of the two-wheeler, three-wheeler, four-wheeler are going to go up, but obviously the affordability, the convenience, when we look at it, we shall see that more at the bottom level, two-wheeler, three-wheeler will go up faster than anything else. And with the e-commerce, with your business model, there will be huge opportunity of getting the job developed, getting the new area, going into the new areas where the job creation will be further created. When we create a job, we are also required to understand, and we are required to give importance how to preserve that job, because we create that job and that job get vanished after 5 years, then it is not going to be really helpful. And when it comes to inclusive growth, it is also required to be seen the job is created at the white collar level, blue collar level, or at the lowest level of the population, particularly looking at India is concerned, rural India is concerned, rural uh, population is concerned. And our growth actually is going to come. The total complete socioeconomic development is going to happen only when we shall be able to upgrade the livelihood of this segment of the people. And that possibility is much more when we adopt and embrace the EV system. And in the whole ecosystem, we improve. And all the stakeholders, we work together with a collaborative, cooperative, and supportive attitude to each other. I'm very happy today that Dolon has got some, I would not say till it is finally concluded positively, but that's how when all the stakeholders start working together uh, um, uh, and thinking about others, the positive thing and good thing are supposed to happen. Thank you very, very much. With this, I would like to conclude this session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having us, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mukherjee.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all the distinguished speakers and dignitaries in the session. Here we would like to end this session. I would like to thank our partner, British Deputy High Commission, Kolkata, to partner with us this session, and our sponsor for this program, RPG Power Trading Company. And I would like to end here. Thank you for hearing us today. Thank you.
Thank you.